Hands on the wheel, don't you dare move. The words sliced through the night air like a blade. Dr. Marcus Reynolds, 30-year veteran PhD scholar, the city's newest head of internal affairs, felt cold metal press against his temple. In 60 seconds, everything he'd built would collide with everything he'd sworn to destroy. This is the story of one traffic stop that exposed an entire city's darkest secrets. The fluorescent lights of City Hall flickered against the rain-streaked windows as Marcus Reynolds stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the empty conference room. His reflection stared back a black man in his early 50s, gray threading through his close-cropped hair eyes that had seen too much and remembered everything. He adjusted his tie for the third time, muscle memory from decades of having to look acceptable in rooms where he wasn't welcome. "You're stalling, Marcus." The voice belonged to Mayor Patricia Chen, who'd appeared in the doorway like a ghost. She was a small woman with steel in her spine, the first Asian American mayor of Westlake City, and the only person in municipal government Marcus truly trusted. "Just thinking," Marcus replied, turning to face her. 3 decades on the force. Started as a beat cop in the worst neighborhood they could assign a black rookie. Worked my way up through narcotics homicide community relations. Got my master's degree at night, then my PhD. And now you're the head of internal affairs. Mayor Chen finished, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. The youngest person to ever hold the position. The first black man in Westlake City history. And nobody knows yet. That was the crucial detail. The appointment had been made in a closed-door session just 48 hours ago. The press release was scheduled for Monday morning, 3 days away. For now, Marcus Reynolds was a ghost, a secret weapon, a man who could move through the department without anyone knowing he'd become the most powerful cop in the city. "They're going to hate me," Marcus said quietly. The old guard. The boys' club. Every racist cop who thought they were untouchable. "Good," Mayor Chen said, and there was fire in her voice. "Let them hate you. Let them fear you. Because this department is rotting from the inside, Marcus. You know it. I know it. We've got officers planting evidence, shaking down minority business owners running their own little fiefdoms in neighborhoods they're supposed to protect. And every time we try to investigate, the blue wall goes up and we hit concrete." Marcus knew she was right. He'd spent the last 15 years watching good cops get pushed out, while bad ones got promoted. He'd seen evidence disappear, witnesses recant their statements after mysterious visits from concerned officers, and internal complaints filed against problem cops vanish into administrative black holes. "The Eastern District is the worst," Marcus said, pulling out a thick folder from his briefcase. "I've been tracking patterns for years. Sergeant James Briggs and his crew, they're not even hiding it anymore. Racial profiling numbers that should be impossible. Traffic stops in black neighborhoods up 300% in 2 years. Use of force incidents off the charts. And somehow every complaint against them gets dismissed for lack of evidence." Mayor Chen took the folder, flipping through pages of statistics, incident reports, and witness statements. Her jaw tightened with each page. "Captain Dennis Wallace protects them," she said. It wasn't a question. Wallace is old school. Came up in an era when cops could do whatever they wanted. He sees accountability as weakness, reform as betrayal. And Briggs... Marcus paused, remembering the file he'd memorized. "Briggs is smart enough to know how to work the system. He targets people who won't complain, undocumented immigrants, people with warrants, kids with records. And when someone does speak up, Wallace makes sure it goes nowhere." "But now you're IA," Mayor Chen said, handing the folder back. "You can reopen every case. You can put cameras on those cops. You can—" "I can do my job," Marcus interrupted gently. "By the book. That's the only way this works, Madam Mayor. If I go in there like a crusader, if I make this personal, they'll find a way to destroy me. But if I follow procedure, if I document everything, if I build cases so airtight that even the police union can't protect them," he smiled grimly, "then we can actually change something." Mayor Chen studied him for a long moment. "You're going to need protection, Marcus. These men are dangerous. I know. But I've been a cop longer than most of them have been alive. I know how to handle myself." What Marcus didn't say, what he was trying very hard not to think about, was his family. His wife Angela, a pediatric nurse who'd stood by him through every late night, every dangerous case, every time he'd come home with that look in his eyes that said he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. His son Jamal, 23 years old, working on his master's in social work, bright and passionate, and convinced he could heal the world. They would be in danger too. That was the unspoken truth hanging between Marcus and the mayor like smoke. "Go home," Mayor Chen said finally. "Get some rest. Monday morning, we announce your appointment and everything changes. But tonight, you're just another cop going home after a long shift." Marcus nodded, gathering his things. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for being brave enough to do this." She walked him to the door, then paused. "Marcus, be careful out there, even now, especially now." Wow. The rain had stopped by the time Marcus left City Hall, but the streets were still slick and gleaming under the streetlights. He'd parked 3 blocks away, a habit from his undercover days. Never park where anyone watching the building could track your car. His vehicle was a midnight blue Audi A6 clean, but not flashy, 8 years old, but well-maintained. Angela teased him about it, said he treated that car better than he treated himself. She wasn't wrong. Marcus slid behind the wheel and sat for a moment, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. The leather seat molded to his back, familiar and comfortable. He started the engine, letting it warm up while he checked his phone. 3 messages from Angela. "Working late. Leftovers in the fridge if you're hungry. Love you. Drive safe." He smiled, typing back. "Heading home now. Love you too." 1 message from Jamal. "Dad saw a documentary about police reform in Camden, NJ. We should talk about it. This is what you've been saying for years." Marcus's chest tightened with pride. His son got it. Understood why this work mattered, why change had to come from inside the system, not just from protests and pressure from outside. He pulled out of the parking spot and headed east toward the suburb where he and Angela had bought their house 12 years ago. A modest 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, integrated enough that they didn't stand out, nice enough that Jamal had gone to good schools. The route took him through downtown, past the gentrified warehouse district, where tech companies had moved into buildings that used to house unions and factories. Then the landscape changed. The buildings got shorter, the streetlights less frequent, the businesses behind security gates. The Eastern District. Marcus had worked this area as a rookie. Back then, it had been rough but functional working-class families, small businesses, churches that served as community centers. Now it looked like a war zone. Boarded-up storefronts, empty lots filled with trash, groups of young men on corners who watched every car that passed. This was Sergeant James Briggs's territory. Marcus knew he should take the highway bypass this neighborhood entirely, but something made him stay on the surface streets. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the researcher in him wanting to see the evidence firsthand. Maybe it was the part of him that was still a street cop, unable to look away from trouble. He checked his rearview mirror out of habit, a motion so automatic he barely registered it. Empty road behind him. Quiet Friday night, nearly midnight, most people tucked safely in their homes. That's when he saw the lights. Blue and red flashing in the distance, growing larger in his mirror. Marcus's heart rate kicked up, but he kept his speed steady. He wasn't speeding. His registration was current. His insurance was up to date. All his lights worked. He checked them himself every week because he knew what it meant to give a cop an excuse to pull you over while black. The patrol car got closer. Marcus could see it now, a Crown Victoria, the old model the department kept using for the Eastern District, because the newer SUVs got assigned to the wealthy neighborhoods on the west side. Keep driving. They're probably just heading to a call. But the lights stayed behind him. Constant distance. Following. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. Muscle memory kicked in, the survival skills every black man learned, passed down like folklore, refined through generations of dangerous encounters. The patrol car accelerated, pulling up beside him at a red light. Through his side window, Marcus could see the driver. White male, thick build, mid-40s. And in the passenger seat, another officer. Younger, leaner, looking uncomfortable. The driver, Marcus couldn't see his nameplate from this angle, but something about the man's posture screamed aggression. Turned to look at him. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. The man smiled. Not a friendly smile. A predator's smile. Then the light changed, and Marcus drove forward, forcing himself to maintain exactly the speed limit. Not too fast, not too slow. Don't give them anything. The patrol car stayed beside him for another block, then fell back. Please just be patrolling. Please just let this go. Then the lights flashed brighter, and the siren chirped twice. The universal signal, pull over. Damn it, Marcus breathed. He activated his turn signal, making sure they could see he was complying, and began to slow down, looking for a well-lit area to stop. This was crucial. Statistics showed that traffic stops in dark, isolated areas were more likely to escalate to violence. He needed witnesses, cameras light. But there was nothing. This stretch of road was industrial warehouses closed for the night, empty parking lots, one broken streetlight casting the whole block in shadow. The patrol car's siren chirped again, more insistent. Marcus had no choice. He pulled to the curb in front of a chain-link fence surrounding a lumber yard. The patrol car stopped behind him, spotlight clicking on, flooding his car with harsh white light. This was the moment every black person feared, no matter how successful they were, how educated, how careful. Because none of that mattered when you were sitting in your car with a cop approaching from behind, and you couldn't see their hands, and you didn't know if they were having a bad day, or if they'd already decided what kind of person you were before they even saw your face. Marcus took a breath. Then another. His therapist's voice echoed in his mind. Center yourself. You've done this before. You know the protocol. He placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, visible in the spotlight. He sat perfectly still, waiting. Through his rearview mirror, he watched the driver's door of the patrol car open. A large man stepped out, the same officer who'd smiled at him at the red light. Even in silhouette, Marcus could read the aggressive body language, shoulders back, hand resting on his service weapon. Movements deliberate and slow. Performing dominance. The officer approached from the driver's side, standard procedure, but done in a way that felt threatening. Heavy footsteps, taking his time. Marcus heard the tap of knuckles on his window before he saw the face. He pressed the button to lower the window exactly halfway, enough to communicate, not enough to make him vulnerable. Cool night air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and motor oil. The flashlight beam hit him directly in the eyes. Blinding. Deliberate. License and registration. The voice was deep, rough, carrying the weight of unquestioned authority. Yes, sir, Marcus said, keeping his voice calm, respectful. My license is in my wallet in my back right pocket. My registration is in the glove compartment. I'm going to move slowly to retrieve them. I didn't ask for a speech. I asked for your documents. Marcus felt the heat of anger flash through him. 30 years of this, 30 years of being treated like a suspect before proven innocent. But he pushed it down. Not now. Not yet. Reaching for my wallet now, Marcus said, narrating every movement. Right hand moving slowly to my back pocket. Removing my wallet. Both hands visible now. Opening wallet. Removing license. He held the license out the window. The officer snatched it from his fingers. Dr. Marcus Reynolds, the officer read, and there was mockery in his tone. Doctor, huh? What kind of doctor? PhD in criminal justice and police psychology, Marcus said evenly. Now I'm reaching for my registration in the glove compartment. Keep your hands where I can see them. The officer's hand moved to his gun. Marcus froze both hands back on the steering wheel. Officer, I need to open the glove compartment to get my registration. You asked for it. Don't tell me what I asked for, boy. The word hung in the air like poison. Boy. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't just a bad stop. This was intentional. This officer had chosen him, targeted him, and was now escalating for no reason except the color of his skin and his nice car in the wrong neighborhood. I'm 49 years old, Marcus said quietly. I'm not a boy, I'm a man, and I'm trying to comply with your requests. Did I ask for your life story? The flashlight beam moved, sweeping across the interior of his car. Why are you in this neighborhood? You dealing drugs? I'm driving home from work. What kind of work? This was the moment. Marcus could tell him the truth, that he was a police officer, that he was about to become this man's worst nightmare. But something stopped him. Some instinct honed by years of investigations, of watching suspects incriminate themselves, of seeing the mask slip when people thought they were talking to someone powerless. If this officer knew who Marcus was, he'd change his behavior. He'd be careful, and Marcus would never see what he was really dealing with. I work in city government, Marcus said. Administration. City government. The officer's tone dripped with contempt. So you're one of those types. Affirmative action hire, probably. Got a fancy car and a fancy degree. Think you're better than the people who really work for a living. The passenger officer had gotten out now, circling around to the other side of the car. Marcus could see him in his peripheral vision, younger, maybe late 20s, with nervous energy that suggested this wasn't his usual routine. Officer Reed, the older officer called out. Run this plate for me. Let's see what our doctor friend here is hiding. Reed. Marcus filed the name away. The younger officer moved back toward the patrol car. Sir. Marcus tried again. Can you tell me why you pulled me over? I wasn't speeding. My vehicle is in full compliance. Step out of the car. Excuse me? I said step out of the car. Now. Or are you resisting? Every nerve in Marcus's body screamed danger. This was wrong. Nothing about this stop was legitimate. No probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, just a racist cop on a power trip who'd found a black man in what he considered his territory. But Marcus also knew the statistics. He knew that failure to comply was the justification used in hundreds of police shootings every year. He knew that arguing now here in the dark with no witnesses was a death sentence. I'm complying, Marcus said. I'm opening my door slowly, both hands visible. I'm stepping out of the vehicle now. He moved with exaggerated care, each gesture slow and obvious. The wet pavement was cold under his dress shoes. He stood at his full height, 6'2", and saw the flash of something in the officer's eyes. Recognition of a perceived threat, or just surprise that this boy was taller than him. Turn around, hands on the car, spread your legs. Marcus turned, placing his palms flat on the roof of his Audi. The metal was cool and slick from the rain. Behind him he heard the officer approaching, boots scraping on asphalt. What's your name, officer? Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady. Sergeant James Briggs, and you'd better show me some respect. Briggs, the name hit Marcus like electricity. This was him, the cop whose file Marcus had been building for 3 years. 23 excessive force complaints, 42 allegations of racial profiling, a pattern of behavior so consistent, so documented, that it should have ended his career a dozen times over. And here he was about to pat down the man who was going to destroy him. Marcus almost laughed. Almost. But he knew better. He knew that revealing his identity now would put Briggs on guard, would give him time to cover his tracks, would turn a prosecutable incident into a he-said-she-said nightmare. So Marcus said nothing. Just stood there, hands on his car, and let it happen. Briggs's hands were rough and invasive, the pat-down more aggressive than necessary. Not a search for weapons, a humiliation tactic. Marcus had done enough stops himself to know the difference. Clean. Briggs grunted. Then louder. Reed, what'd you find? The younger officer jogged over holding a tablet. Registration's current, insurance is good. No warrants, no flags in the system. He paused, then added quietly, "Sir, maybe we should just let him go. He's not—" "Did I ask for your opinion, Officer Reed?" "No, sir." "Then shut up and search the vehicle." "Sir!" Reed's voice climbed an octave. "We don't have probable cause for a search." "I've got probable cause," Briggs said. "I smell marijuana." Marcus's jaw clenched. The oldest lie in the book. "I smell marijuana" had been justification for thousands of illegal searches, because how could you disprove what a cop claimed to smell? "Officer, I don't use drugs," Marcus said. "I don't smoke. I'm asking you not to search my vehicle without a warrant." "Asking." Briggs laughed. "You think this is a negotiation? Reed searched the car. And if you find anything at all, we're taking him in." Reed looked miserable, but he moved toward the passenger side door. Marcus's mind raced. His briefcase was in the back seat. Inside that briefcase were documents marked Internal Affairs Confidential. If Reed found those— But Reed was thorough. Marcus had to give him that. He opened the glove compartment, checked under the seats, lifted the floor mats. When he got to the back seat, Marcus held his breath. Reed's hand touched the briefcase, hesitated, then moved past it to check the trunk. "Nothing, Sergeant," Reed called out. "Vehicle's clean?" Briggs swore under his breath. Marcus could feel the man's frustration radiating like heat. He'd wanted to find something, needed to find something to justify this stop, this humiliation. "Check the trunk again," Briggs ordered. "Sir, I already—" "Check it again." While Reed reluctantly walked back to the trunk, Briggs grabbed Marcus's arm and spun him around. They were face to face now, close enough that Marcus could smell coffee and tobacco on the sergeant's breath. "You think you're smart?" Briggs said, voice low and venomous. "You think because you've got a fancy degree and a nice car you can drive through my district like you own it, but I see through you. I know exactly what you are." "And what am I?" Marcus asked, unable to help himself. "A drug dealer, a gangbanger in a suit. You people always are. You just hide it better than the ones on the corners." "You people." Marcus had heard those words 1,000 times in his life, delivered with the same contempt, the same assumption of criminality, based on nothing but melanin. And every time it cut just as deep. But this time was different, because this time Marcus had power. Not yet, though. Not quite yet. "Officer Briggs," Marcus said carefully, "you've made a mistake." "The only mistake was me being polite," Briggs snarled. He reached for his handcuffs. "You're under arrest." "For what?" "Resisting arrest. Failure to comply with a lawful order." "I've complied with everything you've asked." "That's not how I'm going to write the report." Briggs grabbed Marcus's wrist, yanking it down hard and twisting it behind his back. Pain shot up Marcus's arm. The hold was deliberately too tight, deliberately painful. Marcus gritted his teeth. "Officer Reed," he called out, "are you seeing this?" Reed had emerged from the trunk, his face pale. "Sergeant, maybe we should just—" "Cuff him," Briggs barked. Reed approached reluctantly, pulling out his own handcuffs. As he reached for Marcus's free hand, his eyes met Marcus's. There was something in that look, apology, maybe, or shame. "I'm sorry," Reed whispered so quietly Briggs couldn't hear. "It's not your fault," Marcus whispered back. "But remember this moment. Remember you had a choice." The handcuffs clicked shut, too tight, cutting into his wrists. Marcus knew it was intentional, another small cruelty, another way to assert dominance. Briggs shoved him face first against the car. Marcus's cheek hit the roof hard enough to split the skin. He felt warmth running down his temple. Blood. "Sergeant," Reed's voice was sharp now. "He's bleeding. He resisted, made contact with my hand. It's in my report." Briggs leaned in close. "How does it feel, boy? Still think you're better than me?" Marcus said nothing. His mind was cold and clear now, recording everything. every word, every action, every violation of protocol. Because that was the thing about Marcus Reynolds. He wasn't just a cop. He was a researcher, a scholar, a man who'd spent years studying police behavior, documenting patterns, building cases. And he had a secret that neither Briggs nor Reed knew about. Hidden in his jacket pocket, no bigger than a pack of gum, was a recording device. Standard IA equipment approved for use when investigating police misconduct. He'd started wearing it 3 months ago after the mayor had first approached him about the IA position. Everything was being captured. Every word of this illegal stop, this unconstitutional search, this assault. "Get him in the car," Briggs ordered Reed. "We're taking him to the station." As they walked Marcus toward the patrol car, a second vehicle pulled up. Another Crown Victoria lights flashing. 2 more officers emerged, both white, both looking at Marcus with the same contempt Briggs had shown. "Got a live one, Sarge?" the taller of the two asked. His nameplate read Patterson. "Yeah. Thought he could drive through our district in his fancy car, probably dealing. We're taking him in." Patterson walked around Marcus, slowly appraising him like livestock. "He's a big one. You sure the cuffs are tight enough?" "Reed, check his cuffs," Briggs ordered. Reed approached again, and this time Marcus caught his eye and held it. "Officer Reed," Marcus said quietly, "when you tell this story later, and you will have to tell it, I want you to tell the truth. Can you do that?" Reed's hands shook as he checked the handcuffs. They're tight, sir." "Tighter," Briggs snapped. "Sergeant, they're already cutting off circulation." Did I stutter? Reed's jaw worked. For a moment, Marcus thought the young officer might refuse. But then Reed reached for the cuffs and clicked them 1 notch tighter. Marcus's hands started to go numb. "That's better," Briggs said. He turned to Patterson. "We found him in front of the old lumber yard. Clean search, but I know he's dirty. They always are." "Want us to have another look?" Patterson asked, gesturing toward Marcus's car. "Yeah. Maybe you'll find what Reed missed." Patterson and his partner approached the Audi. Within seconds, they were going through it with far less care than Reed had shown, tossing papers, dumping out the center console, rifling through the glove compartment. Marcus watched helpless as they violated his property. He thought about Angela, probably asleep by now, not knowing that her husband was handcuffed and bleeding on the side of the road. He thought about Jamal, who'd grown up hearing his father's lectures about staying safe around police, about compliance and respect, and never giving them a reason. "Look where all that got me," Marcus thought bitterly. "Hey, Sarge," Patterson called from the back seat. "Found a briefcase back here." Marcus's blood went cold. "Bring it here," Briggs ordered. Patterson emerged holding Marcus's leather briefcase. He set it on the hood of the patrol car and popped it open. The first thing visible was a police badge. Marcus's badge, the one he still carried from his last assignment. Patterson's eyes widened. "Sarge, he's a cop." Everything stopped. Briggs strode over, snatched the badge from the briefcase, held it up to the light. "Marcus Reynolds," Briggs read. "Detective... Shit. He's on the job," Patterson said, his voice uncertain now. Reed had gone white. "Sergeant, I tried to tell you..." "Shut up!" Briggs whirled on Marcus. "Why didn't you say you were a cop?" "You didn't ask," Marcus said simply. "You told me what I was. Drug dealer. Gangbanger. You seemed very sure." Briggs's face flushed dark red. For a moment Marcus wondered if the man would hit him, but instead Briggs pulled out his phone and made a call. "Captain Wallace, it's Briggs. We've got a situation." Marcus tuned out the conversation. His eyes were on Officer Reed, who was staring at the badge like it was a snake. The younger man looked sick. Good, Marcus thought. Feel sick. Feel what you just did. When Briggs finished the call, he turned back to Marcus. "Captain's on his way. He'll straighten this out." "I'm sure he will," Marcus said. "Look, maybe we all got off on the wrong foot here. You pulled me over for no reason. You called me boy. You ordered an illegal search of my vehicle. You assaulted me, handcuffed me, and caused visible injury. Officer Patterson rifled through my personal property without consent or warrant. Officer Reed tightened my handcuffs despite my circulation being compromised. Marcus's voice was calm, clinical. Those aren't missteps, Sergeant Briggs. Those are crimes. The silence that followed was deafening. Patterson took a step back. Reed looked like he might cry. And Briggs? Briggs's expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally something that might have been fear. Now, Marcus continued, here's what's going to happen. You're going to remove these handcuffs. You're going to call an ambulance to document my injuries. You're going to secure all evidence from this stop, your body camera footage, your dash cam, everything. And then you're going to wait for your captain to arrive and try to explain to him why you just assaulted a fellow officer. We didn't know, Patterson started. You didn't know because you didn't care. Marcus cut him off. You saw a black man in a nice car and decided he must be a criminal. That's called racial profiling. It's illegal. And it's about to end your career. Briggs's hand trembled as he reached for the handcuff key. But before he could move, headlights appeared in the distance. A black SUV moving fast, lights flashing. Captain Dennis Wallace had arrived. The SUV screeched to a stop. Wallace emerged, a thick-bodied man in his 60s. Gray hair cut military short, a face weathered by 35 years of police work. He took in the scene with one sweeping glance, Marcus bleeding and handcuffed Briggs, holding the key, Reed looking guilty, Patterson hovering near the Audi with Marcus's briefcase still open on the hood. Somebody want to tell me what the hell is going on here? Wallace's voice could have stripped paint. Captain, there's been a misunderstanding, Briggs began. I wasn't talking to you. Wallace walked straight to Marcus. Detective Reynolds, are you injured? Laceration on my left temple, abrasions on both wrists from excessive force with handcuffs. I'd like medical attention and documentation of all injuries. Wallace's jaw tightened. He turned to Briggs. Take off those cuffs. Now. Briggs moved forward, hands shaking. As he released the handcuffs, Marcus felt blood rush back into his fingers. The pain was intense. Thank you, Captain, Marcus said, rubbing his wrists. Each movement left angry red marks visible even in the dim light. Wallace pulled Briggs aside. Marcus couldn't hear the conversation, but he didn't need to. The captain's body language said everything, sharp gestures, pointing fingers, barely controlled fury. Meanwhile, Reed approached Marcus hesitantly. Sir, I'm sorry. You should have refused an illegal order, Marcus said. But I understand you were in a difficult position. Just know that you'll be asked to give a statement about tonight. I hope you'll tell the truth. I will, Reed said miserably. I swear I will. An ambulance arrived 15 minutes later, lights, but no siren. The paramedic, a young Latina woman named Rodriguez, cleaned the cut on Marcus's temple and photographed his wrists. These cuff marks are deep, she said quietly. You could file a complaint. Oh, I will, Marcus assured her. Trust me. While Rodriguez worked, Captain Wallace returned. He'd sent Briggs, Patterson, and Reed back to their vehicles, where they sat like chastened children. Marcus, Wallace said, and there was something weary in his voice. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much right now, but I am. Briggs can be aggressive, but he's usually more careful than this. He was careful, Marcus said. He just didn't think there would be consequences. Because there never are there, Captain? Wallace looked away. I'll handle this internally. No. Marcus's voice was quiet, but absolute. You won't. Wallace's eyes snapped back to him. What? You're not handling this internally. I'm filing formal complaints against all 4 officers involved: Briggs for the illegal stop, unconstitutional search, assault, and battery, Patterson for illegal search, Reed for failure to intervene, and whoever else participated in this circus. Marcus, think about this. These men made a mistake, but they're good cops. They're criminals with badges. Marcus cut him off. And I'm done watching good officers get punished for speaking up, while bad ones get protected because they're part of the club. Wallace's face hardened. You do this, you make enemies. Powerful enemies. Is that really what you want? Marcus stood up, nodding his thanks to the paramedic. He faced Wallace directly, and in that moment he saw the older man recognize something in his eyes. Determination, and something more. Something that made Wallace take a half-step back. Captain Wallace, Marcus said slowly. I need to tell you something. In approximately 60 hours, Mayor Chen is going to announce my new position. As of last Thursday, I am the head of internal affairs for Westlake City Police Department. The color drained from Wallace's face. So to answer your question, yes, I want to make enemies. Because my enemies are exactly the kind of cops who shouldn't be wearing a badge. And starting Monday morning, I'm coming for all of them. Marcus walked past the stunned captain, past the ambulance, past the patrol cars where Briggs Patterson and Reed sat watching. He walked to his Audi where his briefcase still sat on the hood. He closed it carefully, noting that several documents were out of order, evidence of the illegal search. The car started smoothly. Marcus pulled away from the curb, leaving the scene of his assault, his violation, his transformation. In his rearview mirror, he saw Wallace still standing in the middle of the road, motionless. The recording device in Marcus's pocket had captured everything. Every slur, every illegal action, every moment that proved what he'd known for years: the system wasn't broken by accident. It was working exactly as designed to protect bad cops and punish anyone who challenged them. But now, Marcus had the power to change that, and he was going to use it. As he drove through the Eastern District heading home to Angela, heading toward the battle he'd just declared, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The streets were quiet now, the rain starting again, pattering against his windshield like applause. Tomorrow he'd begin documenting everything. He'd secure the recording file, the reports build the case. But tonight, he just drove. And in the darkness, Marcus Reynolds smiled. The war had begun. The house was dark when Marcus pulled into the driveway at 1:47 a.m. He sat in the car for a long moment, engine ticking as it cooled his hands, still trembling slightly on the steering wheel. The cut on his temple had stopped bleeding, but he could feel it pulling when he moved his face. The wrist marks were worse, deep purple bruises already forming where the handcuffs had bitten into flesh. Angela would see them. She always saw everything. Marcus gathered his briefcase and walked to the front door, each step feeling heavier than the last. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion, and something else, anger-cold and patient, settling in his chest like ice. He unlocked the door as quietly as possible, hoping Angela had gone to sleep. But the kitchen light was on, and he could smell fresh coffee. Of course she'd waited up. Angela Reynolds sat at the kitchen table, still in her scrubs, from her shift at Children's Hospital, her natural hair pulled back in a bun, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed patient charts. She looked up when Marcus entered, and her expression shifted instantly from concentration to concern. "Baby, what happened to your face?" Marcus set down his briefcase and tried to smile. "It's nothing, just a long night." But Angela was already on her feet, moving toward him with the efficient grace of someone who'd spent 25 years assessing injuries. Her fingers were gentle as she tilted his chin, examining the cut. "This needs butterfly stitches. When did this happen?" "About 2 hours ago." 2 hours? Her voice rose. "Marcus, you should have gone to the ER. I had a paramedic look at it. She cleaned it, said it wasn't deep enough for stitches." He caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. "I'm okay, Angie. I promise." She studied his face the way she studied her patients, looking past the words to the truth underneath. Then her gaze dropped to his wrists, where his shirt cuffs had ridden up to reveal the bruises. Angela's breath caught. "Who did this to you?" Marcus had known this moment was coming, had rehearsed what he'd say during the drive home. But now, looking into his wife's eyes, seeing the fear and fury warring there, all his careful words evaporated. "Cops," he said simply. "4 of them. They pulled me over in the Eastern District." The color drained from Angela's face. She'd been a nurse long enough to know what happened to black men during traffic stops. Long enough to have treated the survivors and documented the ones who didn't survive. "Tell me everything," she said, leading him to the kitchen table. "Start to finish." So he did. He told her about driving home from City Hall, about seeing the patrol car, about Briggs's smile at the red light. He told her about being called boy, about the illegal search, about the handcuffs cutting into his wrists. He didn't spare any details, not the blood running down his temple, not the way Patterson had rifled through his briefcase, not the moment when he'd revealed his badge and watched them all realize what they'd done. Angela listened without interrupting, her hand gripping his tighter with each sentence. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. "You could have died," she said, finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, you could have died tonight. But I didn't. Because you got lucky. Because you had a badge in your briefcase. Because Captain Wallace showed up before—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Marcus pulled her into his arms, feeling her shake against him. "I'm here. I'm safe. And I'm going to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Angela pulled back, wiping her eyes. "The IA position. You're going after them." "I have to." "They'll come after you too. After us. After Jamal." "I know." Marcus took a breath. "Angie, if you want me to walk away from this, I will. I'll call the mayor tomorrow and decline the position. We can move to another city, start over." "Don't you dare." Angela's voice was steel. "Don't you dare let those bastards win. You've been fighting this your whole career, building toward this moment. I'm not going to let you quit now because I'm scared." "You have every right to be scared." "Of course I'm scared. I'm terrified. But I'm also angry, Marcus. I'm so damn angry." She gestured at his wrists. "This is what they do. This is what they've always done. And if you don't stop them, who will?" Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, relief and love and gratitude all tangled together. "I don't deserve you." "You're right, you don't." Angela managed a small smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway. For better or worse, remember. For better or worse." They sat together in the quiet kitchen, holding hands across the table, like they had on their first date 30 years ago, when Marcus was a rookie cop with big dreams, and Angela was a nursing student with bigger ones. Back then, they'd talked about changing the world. Somewhere along the way, that dream had gotten buried under the weight of bills and responsibilities and the simple exhaustion of surviving. But tonight, sitting there with bruises on his wrists and fire in his heart, Marcus felt that old dream stirring again. "I'm going to need your help," he said. "Documenting injuries, providing medical testimony if it goes to trial. The paramedic tonight took photos, but I'll need a complete medical record." "Already planning it," Angela said, pulling out her phone. "I'll call Dr. Martinez tomorrow. He's a forensic specialist at the hospital. He'll do a full exam, document everything properly. Chain of custody photographs, the works." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll be careful. Please, Marcus. Don't be a hero, be smart." "I promise." But they both knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both look up. Jamal appeared in the kitchen doorway, tall and lean in basketball shorts and a Howard University t-shirt, his locks pulled back in a ponytail. He took one look at his father's face and his expression went dark. "Who did that to you?" "Jamal." Angela started. "Dad. Who?" Marcus and Angela exchanged a glance. They'd always tried to protect their son from the uglier realities of police work, from the racism and violence that Marcus encountered daily. But Jamal was 23 now, a graduate student studying social work planning to dedicate his life to helping at-risk youth. He deserved the truth. "4 officers from the Eastern District," Marcus said. "They pulled me over, profiled me, searched my car illegally, and assaulted me when I didn't give them a reason to arrest me." Jamal's hands clenched into fists. "Did you report them?" "I'm going to do more than report them. I'm going to destroy their careers." "Good." Jamal pulled out a chair and sat down hard. This is exactly what I've been trying to tell you, Dad. This is what black people deal with every day. This is why we march, why we protest. I know, son. Do you? Because you've spent 30 years telling me to respect the police, to comply, to keep my hands visible and my voice calm. And look where it got you. Jamal gestured at Marcus's injuries. You did everything right and they still beat you. The words hit harder than Briggs's fist had. Because Jamal was right. Marcus had spent decades believing that if he was professional enough, educated enough, respectable enough, he could avoid the violence that claimed so many black men. He'd taught his son the same survival tactics his father had taught him. And tonight, none of it had mattered. You're right, Marcus said quietly. Compliance isn't protection. It never was. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed. Jamal's anger softened into something like surprise. You're actually admitting it. I'm admitting that I was wrong to think I could fix this from the inside by being a good cop, by following the rules, by hoping things would change on their own. Marcus leaned forward. But I'm not wrong about this. The only way to actually change the system is to have people on the inside with the power and the will to tear it down and rebuild it. And as of Monday morning, I'm going to be one of those people. He told Jamal about the internal affairs appointment, about the mayor's plans, about the evidence he'd been collecting for years. And as he spoke, he watched his son's expression shift from skepticism to understanding to something that looked almost like hope. You're really going to do this, Jamal said. You're going to go after them. All of them. Starting with Briggs and his crew, but not ending there. Every corrupt cop, every captain who covers for them, every system that protects bad officers at the expense of the communities they're supposed to serve. They'll fight back. You know they will. Let them. Marcus felt that cold anger crystallizing into purpose. I've got evidence, I've got the mayor's backing, and after tonight, I've got motivation. They handed me everything I need to take them down. Angela stood up, moving to the kitchen counter where she kept her nursing bag. She pulled out a camera and a measurement tape. Before we go any further with this conversation, I'm documenting every injury. Marcus, stand under the light. For the next 20 minutes, Angela worked with clinical precision, photographing the cut on Marcus's temple from multiple angles, measuring and documenting the bruises on his wrists, checking his pupils for signs of concussion, palpating his ribs for fractures. Jamal assisted, holding the measurement tape and writing down observations in a notebook. It felt surreal being treated like a crime scene in his own kitchen by his wife and son. But Marcus understood the importance. Evidence was everything. Without proper documentation, Briggs could claim Marcus's injuries were minor, accidental, self-inflicted. Moderate contusion, left temporal region approximately 2 centimeters in diameter, Angela dictated as Jamal wrote. Severe circumferential abrasions, both wrists consistent with excessive force from restraints. Slight swelling noted. Reduced range of motion due to pain. When she finished, Angela downloaded the photos to her laptop and created an encrypted folder. I'll send these to Dr. Martinez first thing in the morning. He'll want to see you in person, probably Monday. Monday, I'll be announcing the IA appointment, Marcus said. It'll have to be after. Fine. Tuesday then. But Marcus, you need to file the official complaint tomorrow. Don't wait. I can't file until Monday. I'm not officially IA yet. If I file as a regular detective, Wallace can bury it. Then what are you going to do for the next 60 hours? Jamal asked. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. I'm going to build a case so airtight that even the police union can't save them. He spent the rest of the night at the kitchen table with his laptop pulling together 3 years of research. Every excessive force complaint against Briggs, every questionable arrest, every pattern of behavior that showed systematic targeting of Black and Latino drivers. He cross-referenced arrest records with demographic data, mapping out how traffic stops in the Eastern District clustered in minority neighborhoods while wealthy white areas saw almost no police presence. The numbers told a damning story. Under Briggs's leadership, traffic stops of Black drivers had increased by 347% in 2 years. while stops of white drivers had decreased by 23%. Use of force incidents were up 412% in black neighborhoods, but down 15% in white areas. And property seizures, civil asset forfeiture, the legal theft that let cops confiscate cash and vehicles from people never charged with crimes, had exploded. "Look at this," Marcus said, turning the laptop so Angela and Jamal could see. "Briggs personally seized over $340,000 in cash last year. Know how many of those seizures led to criminal charges?" "How many?" Jamal asked. 12 out of 97 seizures. That means 85 people had their money stolen by police and never got it back. Never got charged with a crime. Never got their day in court. Angela's jaw tightened. "That's not policing. That's robbery. It's legal robbery. And it gets worse." Marcus pulled up another file. Most of those seizures, they happened in front of 3 specific addresses. Want to guess what those addresses are? "I don't know," Jamal said. "Drug houses. Development projects. Luxury condos being built in the Eastern District. Briggs and his guys are clearing out the neighborhood, making it safe for gentrification. They're not fighting crime, they're doing the dirty work for real estate developers." The implications hit them all at once. This wasn't just about racist cops on power trips. This was organized, systematic, profitable. Briggs wasn't acting alone. He couldn't be. Someone was protecting him, directing him, benefiting from his actions. "Who owns those development projects?" Angela asked. Marcus clicked through property records. "Shell corporations mostly, but if you trace them back far enough..." He paused, staring at the screen. "They all lead to one holding company, Westlake Development Group." "Never heard of them," Jamal said. "Neither had I, so I did some digging." Marcus pulled up the corporate registry. The board of directors is interesting. 3 city council members, 2 retired police officers, and... He stopped, his blood going cold. "And what?" Angela leaned closer to look at the screen. Then she saw it too. Oh God. Listed as a consultant for Westlake Development Group was Deputy Chief Thomas Harrison, the second highest ranking officer in the entire police department. The man who would be responsible for overseeing internal affairs. The man who would be Marcus's direct supervisor starting Monday. "He's involved," Jamal breathed. "The deputy chief is involved in the corruption." Marcus sat back, his mind racing. This changed everything. He'd thought he was going after a few bad cops in one district. But if Harrison was involved, if the corruption went that high, then how many other officers were part of it? How many captains, lieutenants, sergeants? How deep did this go? And more importantly, was Marcus walking into a trap? The announcement on Monday would make him head of internal affairs, but it would also make him a target. Every cop involved in this scheme would know exactly who threatened their operation. And if Harrison had the power, Marcus thought he did, then the deputy chief could make Marcus's life very difficult or very short. "You can't take this job," Angela said, reading his thoughts. "Marcus, if Harrison is dirty, if he's connected to all this, he'll destroy you the second you try to investigate. Or he'll have someone else do it," Jamal added grimly. "Dad, cops kill cops who threaten them. It happens. You know it does." Marcus knew. He'd worked in internal affairs before, had seen how officers who got too close to the truth ended up demoted, transferred, or suddenly facing their own investigations for mysterious infractions. And in rare cases, they ended up dead suicides that weren't quite suicide accidents, that seemed too convenient, off-duty shootings, ruled as justifiable. The blue wall protected its own. And it eliminated threats. "I'm not backing down," Marcus said. "Then you need protection," Angela insisted. "Real protection. Federal protection." "She's right," Jamal said. "The FBI, maybe, if this involves real estate fraud and public corruption. The FBI won't touch this without evidence." Marcus interrupted. And right now, all I have are property records and statistics. That's enough to raise questions, but not enough to launch a federal investigation. What about the mayor? Angela asked. She appointed you. She knows the department is corrupt. Can't she help? Marcus considered it. Mayor Chen had the power to request federal oversight to bring in outside investigators. But she was also a politician vulnerable to pressure from the police union, the city council, the business interests that funded her campaigns. If Marcus went to her now, before he had ironclad evidence, she might decide he was too much of a liability. Or worse, she might already know about Harrison's involvement and not care. No, Marcus needed to be smarter than that. He needed to build his case quietly, carefully documenting everything before anyone knew what he was doing. And he needed insurance evidence that would be released automatically if anything happened to him. I'm going to create a dead man's switch, Marcus said. A what? Jamal asked. An automated system. I'll compile all my evidence, everything I have on Briggs Harrison, the development scheme, all of it, and set it up so that if I don't check in every 24 hours, the files automatically get sent to the FBI, the Justice Department, the press, everyone. That's paranoid, Angela said. That's smart, Marcus corrected. If they know that killing me means exposing everything, they won't kill me. They'll try other ways to stop me first, discrediting me, threatening my family, legal harassment. And those methods I can defend against. Angela didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Okay. But you're not doing this alone. We're going to help you. Tell us what you need. They worked together until dawn, building a comprehensive database of evidence. Marcus compiled his research, while Angela organized it into a coherent narrative, her years of medical charting making her surprisingly good at documentation. Jamal used his social work contacts to pull demographic data from community organizations, showing patterns of police harassment that matched Marcus's statistics. By 6 a.m., they had a file that was devastating. Hundreds of pages of evidence showing systematic racism, corruption, and abuse of power. Property seizure records that traced back to Harrison's development company. Witness statements from people Briggs had harassed. Statistical analysis proving racial profiling. And now, fresh from tonight, Marcus's own assault, documented, photographed, and recorded. Marcus set up the automated system on a secure server, programming it to require a password entry every 24 hours. If he missed the deadline, the entire file would be sent to 50 different email addresses, journalists, FBI agents, civil rights organizations, even international press. There, he said, hitting the final key. Insurance. The sun was rising now, painting the kitchen in shades of gold and amber. Marcus felt exhausted, but focused. In less than 48 hours, he would step into the most dangerous position of his career. But he would do it armed with evidence, protected by his dead man's switch, and supported by the two people who mattered most. We should try to get some sleep, Angela said, though she looked as wired as Marcus felt. Yeah. But none of them moved. They sat there in the growing light, bound together by purpose and fear and love. Jamal broke the silence. Dad, when you take down Briggs and Harrison and all the others, what happens after? To the police department, to the city. You're going to tear down the system. But what do you build in its place? It was the question Marcus had been avoiding. Because destroying corruption was one thing, building something better was infinitely harder. I don't know yet, Marcus admitted. But I think we need to reimagine what policing means. Who becomes a cop and why? How we train them, how we hold them accountable. We need community oversight, civilian review boards, mandatory de-escalation training. We need to demilitarize the police and reinvest in social services. You need a revolution, Jamal said. Marcus smiled. Maybe I do. Then I want to help. When this is over, when you've cleaned house and rebuilt the system, I want to be part of it. Not as a social worker watching from the outside. As a cop. A new kind of cop. Angela's head snapped up. Jamal, no. Mom, listen, Dad's right. The only way to change the system is from the inside. And if he can do it, if he can actually reform this department and make it something worth joining, then I want to be there. I want to be one of the new generation. The ones who do it right. Marcus looked at his son, his brilliant, idealistic, brave son, and felt pride and terror in equal measure. The thought of Jamal wearing a badge, carrying a gun, facing the dangers Marcus had faced for 30 years was almost unbearable. But he also understood. This was the legacy Marcus would leave. Not just a cleaned-up police department, but a new model for what law enforcement could be. And if Jamal wanted to be part of that, who was Marcus to stop him? "We'll talk about it after," Marcus said. "After I've survived the next few weeks and we've seen what's left of the department. Deal. Deal." They finally went to bed as the neighborhood woke up around them. Saturday morning, children playing in yards, lawnmowers, starting up the normal rhythms of suburban life. Marcus lay next to Angela in their darkened bedroom, listening to her breathe, feeling the warmth of her body against his. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too. But I'm also proud of you. So proud." Marcus closed his eyes, letting her words wash over him. He'd spent his whole career trying to be the kind of cop his father would be proud of, the kind of man his son could look up to. And maybe, just maybe, he was finally becoming that person. But the cost might be higher than he'd imagined. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. Alone. Don't tell anyone." No signature. No context. Just those 11 words. Marcus stared at the message, his mind cycling through possibilities. A threat? A warning? An ally trying to reach out? He didn't respond. Just saved the number and set the phone aside. Tomorrow, he would find out who wanted to talk. Tomorrow, he would take another step into the darkness. But tonight, he held his wife close and tried to remember what safety felt like. Because he had a feeling it would be a long time before he felt safe again. Marcus woke to the smell of bacon and the sound of his phone ringing. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom window. It was past noon. He'd slept maybe 4 hours, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion, despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The phone showed another unknown number, different from the text last night. He answered cautiously. "Reynolds." "Detective Reynolds." The voice was young male, shaking. "This is Officer Reed, from last night. Please don't hang up." Marcus sat up, instantly awake. Angela stirred beside him, her eyes opening with concern. He put a finger to his lips and switched the phone to speaker. "I'm listening. I need to talk to you. About what happened. About what's been happening." Reed's words tumbled out fast, desperate. "But not on the phone. And not anywhere near the station. Can you meet me?" "When?" "Today. Now. There's a coffee shop on Maple Street, the one near the university, Java Junction. Do you know it?" Marcus knew it. Public place, lots of witnesses, neutral territory. "I'll be there in an hour." "Come alone. Please. If Briggs finds out I'm talking to you." Reed's voice broke. "Just come alone." The line went dead. Angela was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. "You're not going alone." "Angie." "Don't Angie me. That could be a trap. Reed could be working with Briggs, trying to lure you somewhere isolated. Java Junction is a public coffee shop. If they wanted to ambush me, they'd pick somewhere private. Or they're counting on you thinking that way." She grabbed her purse. "I'm coming with you. I'll sit at a different table, pretend I don't know you. But I'm not letting you walk into a potential trap by yourself." Marcus wanted to argue, but he knew that expression. Angela had her nurse face on, the one that meant the discussion was over and the patient would comply whether they liked it or not. "Fine, but stay out of sight. If Reed sees someone with me, he might bolt." They found Jamal in the kitchen cooking breakfast with the focused intensity he brought to everything. 3 plates were already set out, loaded with eggs, bacon, and toast. "Figured you'd need fuel," Jamal said, sliding a plate toward Marcus. You look like hell, by the way. Thanks, son. Your honesty is always appreciated. Who was on the phone? Marcus told him about Reed's call while he ate, forcing food down despite his stomach being in knots. Angela explained their plan, and Jamal immediately grabbed his jacket. I'm coming too. Absolutely not, Marcus and Angela said in unison. Dad, if this is a trap, you need backup. I can sit outside, watch who comes and goes, take photos. If anything looks wrong, I call 911. Jamal, these are dangerous men. Who already came after you once. Who might come after our whole family. I'm not sitting home waiting to find out if my father survives the day. Jamal's voice was steel. I'm 23 years old. I'm not a child. And this is my fight too. Marcus looked at his son, tall and strong and determined, and saw himself at that age, full of idealism and courage, convinced he could change the world through sheer force of will. It had taken 30 years and countless disappointments to temper that idealism into something harder, sharper. But maybe that fire was what they needed right now. Okay, Marcus said finally. But you stay in the car. You watch and you document, but you do not engage. Understood. Understood. They drove separately. Marcus in his Audi, Angela and Jamal following in Angela's Honda. The coffee shop was in a neighborhood near Westlake University, an area that had somehow escaped both decay and aggressive gentrification. Tree-lined streets, old houses converted to bookstores and cafes, students and professors and neighborhood regulars all mixing together. Marcus parked 2 blocks away and walked, scanning the area for anything suspicious. But it was just a normal Sunday afternoon. Couples drinking lattes, students hunched over laptops, an acoustic guitarist busking on the corner. Java Junction was exactly what Marcus expected. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, the hiss of an espresso machine competing with indie folk music playing too loud. He ordered a black coffee and found a table near the back with a view of both entrances. Through the window, he could see Angela settling at an outdoor table with a book. Jamal was somewhere in the car watching. Marcus felt slightly ridiculous, like they were playing spy games instead of meeting a scared young cop. But then again, his wrist still bore the bruises from last night. Maybe caution wasn't ridiculous at all. Reed arrived 10 minutes late, looking over his shoulder as he entered. He'd changed out of his uniform into jeans and a hoodie, but his posture still screamed cop, that particular alertness, the way his eyes swept the room, cataloging threats and exits. He spotted Marcus and hesitated, then walked over and sat down without ordering anything. Thank you for coming, Reed said quietly. Why did you want to meet? Reed's hands were shaking. He clasped them together on the table, trying to steady himself. I need to tell you what's really going on in the Eastern District, and I need to do it before I lose my nerve. I'm listening. Last night, what Briggs did to you that wasn't unusual. That's standard operating procedure for him and his crew. Reed's voice was barely audible over the music. They profile, they harass, they shake people down. And Captain Wallace protects them because they're bringing in numbers. Arrests, citations, asset seizures. Makes the district look productive. I know all this, Officer Reed. I've been documenting it for years. But you don't know about the quotas. Reed leaned forward. Briggs has targets we're supposed to hit. Not official department quotas, those are illegal. But Briggs's personal quotas. 10 traffic stops per shift in minority neighborhoods. 5 citations minimum. 1 arrest if possible. And if we can seize cash or property, even better. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. What happens if officers don't meet quota? Bad shifts, desk duty, harassment. Briggs makes your life hell until you comply or quit. Reed's eyes were haunted. I've seen good cops driven out because they wouldn't play along. And the ones who stay, we become complicit. We become them. Why are you telling me this now? Reed was quiet for a long moment. Because last night I watched Briggs assault a man for no reason except the color of his skin. I watched him violate every protocol, every oath we took, and I stood there and did nothing because I was scared. Because I wanted to keep my job, wanted to fit in, wanted to be one of the guys." He looked up and there were tears in his eyes. "But then you told me to remember I had a choice. And I realized I've been making the wrong choice every single day for 2 years." Marcus studied the young officer's face, looking for deception, for a trap. But all he saw was genuine remorse and terror. "If you testify to this, Briggs will destroy you. Wallace will destroy you. You know that, right?" "I know. That's why I need protection. I need you to tell me this is going to be worth it. That if I speak up, something will actually change." Marcus thought about the evidence he'd compiled, the dead man's switch, the corruption that went all the way up to Deputy Chief Harrison. He thought about the risk Reed was taking, the courage it took to break the blue wall. "I can't promise it will be easy," Marcus said, "but I can promise that I'm going to burn this whole corrupt system down and build something better, and I need good cops like you to help me do it." Reed nodded slowly. Okay. What do you need from me?" "Everything. Names, dates, specific incidents. I need you to document every illegal quota, every unconstitutional stop, every case where officers falsified reports or planted evidence. Can you do that?" "Yes, but there's something else you should know." Reed glanced around nervously, then pulled out his phone. "Briggs isn't working alone. There's a whole network. Cops, city officials, developers. They're systematically clearing out the Eastern District, driving down property values so their friends can buy cheap and flip for profit." "I know about Westlake Development Group." "Then you know about Deputy Chief Harrison?" "Yes. But do you know about the others?" Reed pulled up a photo on his phone, a group of men in suits at what looked like a private event. Marcus recognized Harrison in the center, Briggs on his left. But there were others he didn't recognize. Reed zoomed in on faces. "That's Councilman Davis. He chairs the Planning Commission. Next to him is Frank Morrison, owns half the rental properties in the Eastern District. And that's Mayor Chen's Chief of Staff, Richard Vance." Marcus felt the world tilt. "Vance. Are you sure?" "Positive. I took this photo myself 3 months ago at a fundraiser. They thought I was just doing security, but I was watching, listening. They were talking about cleaning up neighborhoods, about strategic enforcement, about how much money they'd make once the area was gentrified. If Vance was involved, that meant the mayor's office was compromised. Marcus had been counting on Mayor Chen's support, had trusted her commitment to reform. But if her own chief of staff was part of the corruption scheme, could she really be trusted? Or was she complicit too? "Send me that photo," Marcus said, "and any other evidence you have. But Reed, listen to me carefully. If these people find out you're talking to me, they won't just fire you. They'll come after you hard. Planted evidence, false accusations may be worse. You need to be prepared for that." "I know. That's why I'm moving out of my apartment tonight. Staying with my girlfriend's family in another city until this blows up. And I'm documenting everything, making backups, preparing my own insurance policy." Reed managed a grim smile. "I learned from the best after all. You cops are good at covering your asses." Despite everything, Marcus almost laughed. "Smart kid." They spent the next hour going through Reed's evidence. Photos, videos, audio recordings from his own body camera that he'd copied before the footage could be deleted or altered. Names of other officers who might be willing to testify. Details about specific stops where Briggs had clearly profiled drivers based on race. It was damning. Combined with what Marcus already had, it was enough to trigger a federal investigation. Maybe enough to bring charges. But it also meant Marcus was in more danger than he'd realized. This wasn't just about dirty cops anymore. This was a conspiracy that reached into city government, into the mayor's office itself. These people had billions of dollars at stake. They wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatened them. When Reed finally left, slipping out a side exit and disappearing into the Sunday afternoon crowd, Marcus sat alone at his table. His coffee, long cold, his mind racing. His phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number from last night. Same place, tonight, 9 p.m. Come alone, or people die. Marcus stared at the message. Not a request this time, a threat. Same place. Had to mean the location where Briggs had pulled him over that stretch of road in the Eastern District. This was the trap Angela had worried about. Someone luring him to an isolated location under threat of violence. But who sent it? And who were the people who would die if Marcus didn't comply? He forwarded the text to Angela with a message. Heading home. We need to talk. Outside, he found Angela still reading at her table, though he suspected she hadn't turned a page in the last hour. She saw his face and immediately packed up her book. They found Jamal sitting in the Honda 3 blocks away, his phone out clearly having photographed everyone who'd entered or left the coffee shop. Reed came alone, Jamal reported. No tail that I could see. But there was a car that circled the block twice while you were inside. Dark blue sedan couldn't get the plates. Could have been nothing, Marcus said. Could have been surveillance, Jamal countered. They regrouped at home, spreading out in the living room. Marcus showed them Reed's evidence, explained about Vance's involvement, told them about the threatening text. Angela's face went pale. You're not going. I have to. If they're threatening to hurt people, it's a bluff. They're trying to lure you somewhere isolated so they can kill you and claim it was self-defense. Or make it look like a robbery. Marcus, you can't fall for this. What if it's not a bluff? Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her the text again. What if they've grabbed someone to use as leverage, Reed maybe? Or a witness? Or... He couldn't finish the thought. The idea that they might threaten Angela or Jamal made him feel physically ill. Then we call the FBI, Jamal said. Dad, you've got enough evidence now. Reed's testimony, the photos, everything. Turn it all over to the feds and let them handle it. Marcus had considered this, but the FBI moved slowly, bureaucratically. They'd need weeks to verify evidence, months to build a case. And in that time, how many witnesses would disappear? How much evidence would be destroyed? How many more people would be victimized by Briggs and his crew? I need to know who sent that text, Marcus said. And what they want. Maybe it's someone trying to help. Maybe there's another cop like Reed who wants to talk, but is too scared to meet in public. Or maybe it's Harrison setting a trap to eliminate you before you can expose him, Angela shot back. Marcus, please, don't do this. They argued for an hour, going in circles. Angela wanted him to call the FBI immediately. Jamal suggested going to the meeting, but bringing backup, maybe trusted friends from Marcus's old squad. Marcus considered contacting Mayor Chen directly, confronting her about Vance's involvement. But every option had risks. Every choice could backfire. Finally, at 7 p.m., Marcus made a decision. I'm going to the meeting, but I'm wearing a wire, and I'm activating a live GPS tracker. Angela, you and Jamal will monitor from here. If anything goes wrong, you call 911 and send the FBI every piece of evidence we have. Marcus. This is happening, Angie. These people have been terrorizing communities for years. They've been stealing, lying, assaulting innocent people. And now they're threatening me because I'm finally in a position to stop them. He took her hands. I have to do this. You know I do. Angela's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she nodded. Then we do it smart. You wear my medical alert device. It has a panic button that sends your exact GPS coordinates to emergency services. And you keep your phone on an open line so we can hear everything. Jamal disappeared into his room and returned with a small camera, the kind used by adventure vloggers. Clip this to your jacket. It'll record everything and live stream to my laptop. If something happens, we'll have video evidence. They spent the next hour preparing. Marcus changed into dark clothes, strapped on the recording equipment, tested the GPS tracker. Angela made him promise 3 times that he'd run at the first sign of danger. Jamal programmed multiple emergency numbers into a one-touch system on Marcus's phone. At 8:30, Marcus got in his car and started driving toward the Eastern District. The sun had set, leaving the city in that purple twilight that made everything look both beautiful and ominous. As he crossed into the district, the streetlights got sparser, the buildings more run down. He drove past the spot where Briggs had pulled him over last night. The lumber yard was dark, the chain-link fence casting long shadows across the empty street. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel muscle memory from the assault, making his heart rate spike. But there was no one there. No cars, no people, nothing. Marcus checked the time. 8:47. Still early. He parked under a working streetlight, maintaining visibility, and waited. Through his phone, he could hear Angela and Jamal's breathing. They were listening, watching the live stream, ready to act. "I'm in position," Marcus said quietly. "No sign of anyone yet." "Copy that." Jamal replied, his voice tight with tension. "Dad, there's a car approaching from the east. Headlights off." Marcus saw it in his rearview mirror. A dark sedan moving slowly, no lights. It pulled up 20 feet behind him and stopped. The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with authority. Marcus's blood ran cold as the man stepped into the streetlight. Deputy Chief Thomas Harrison. Harrison walked toward Marcus's car, his face unreadable. Marcus rolled down his window, every nerve on high alert. "Detective Reynolds," Harrison said. His voice was smooth, cultured, nothing like Briggs's rough aggression. "Thank you for coming." "You sent the text." "I did. And I'm glad you were smart enough to come alone. Or—" Harrison glanced at the camera clipped to Marcus's jacket and smiled. "Relatively alone. Recording this, I assume?" "Yes." "Good. Because I want you to remember every word I'm about to say." Harrison leaned against Marcus's car, casual, confident. "You've been very busy this weekend, Detective. Talking to Officer Reed, compiling evidence, building your case against Sergeant Briggs and his associates." Marcus said nothing, just waited. "Here's what you don't understand," Harrison continued. "Briggs and his crew aren't the problem. They're the solution. The Eastern District was a war zone before we implemented our strategy. Crime rates through the roof, property values in the toilet, businesses fleeing. We changed that. By terrorizing innocent people, by stealing their property, by restoring order, by making the neighborhood safe for investment and growth. Yes, we had to be aggressive. Yes, some people got hurt. But the alternative was watching an entire district die." Harrison's voice hardened. "I'm not the villain here, Detective. I'm the man who saved that neighborhood. You're the man who's getting rich off of it." Harrison laughed. "And you think public service pays well? I've given 32 years to the city. I've earned the right to profit from my work. We all have. Westlake development isn't corruption, it's capitalism. We saw an opportunity, and we took it. While violating the constitutional rights of hundreds of people. Rights are important, Detective. But so is survival. So is progress. Sometimes you have to choose." Harrison straightened up his casual demeanor, dropping away to reveal something colder underneath. "Which brings me to why I asked you here. Tomorrow morning, you become head of internal affairs. You'll have the power to investigate anyone in the department, to subpoena records, to destroy careers. That's the job. And I'm offering you a chance to do that job very successfully. Go after the officers who deserve it, the genuinely bad cops, the ones who bring shame to the badge. I'll even help you. I'll give you names, evidence, everything you need to make high-profile cases. You'll be a hero, a reformer, the man who cleaned up Westlake PD, in exchange for leaving you and your operation alone. In exchange for understanding nuance, for recognizing that sometimes the ends justify the means, for being pragmatic instead of idealistic." Harrison's eyes were flat, emotionless. "Take the deal, Detective. Build your reputation on the backs of cops who actually deserve to go down. Make your wife proud, set a good example for your son, retire with honors. Everyone wins. Except the people you're victimizing. They'll adapt. They always do. And in 20 years, the Eastern District will be thriving, and no one will remember or care how it happened." Marcus felt a cold fury building in his chest. This man, this decorated officer, this deputy chief genuinely believed what he was saying. He'd convinced himself that theft and assault and civil rights violations were justified by economic growth, that the ends did justify the means. "No," Marcus said simply. Harrison's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "No, I'm not taking your deal. I'm going to investigate you, Deputy Chief. I'm going to document every crime you've committed, every dollar you've stolen, every person you've hurt, and I'm going to make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison." "Then you're a fool." Harrison pulled out his phone and typed something. "I gave you a chance, Detective. I offered you a way to survive this with your career and your family intact. But if you want to be a martyr, if you want to throw away everything you've built for some self-righteous crusade..." Marcus's phone buzzed. A photo message from an unknown number. He opened it and felt the world drop away. It was Jamal, sitting in Angela's car, photographed through the driver's side window from just a few feet away. The caption read, "Your son looks so much like you. Would be a shame if something happened to him." Marcus's vision went red. He threw open his car door, advancing on Harrison with his fists clenched. "You son of a..." "I wouldn't." Harrison held up a hand. "Right now my associate is watching your son and your wife. If I don't text him in the next 60 seconds, things get very unpleasant for them. So I suggest you control yourself." Marcus forced himself to stop to breathe, to think. Through the phone line, he could hear Angela's terrified voice. "Marcus, someone's here. Outside the house. A car just pulled up." "Tell him to leave," Marcus said to Harrison, his voice shaking with rage. "Right now. Or I swear to God, you'll arrest me, with what evidence that photo could have been taken by anyone anytime. This conversation, I'm just warning you about the dangers of investigating dirty cops. Nothing illegal about that." Harrison typed on his phone again. "But I'm not unreasonable. I'll recall my associate. Your family is safe, for now." Through the phone, Marcus heard Jamal's voice. "The car's leaving. Dad, what's happening?" "Are they okay?" Marcus demanded. Harrison nodded. "Perfectly fine, but that can change very quickly if you make the wrong choice. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home. You're going to think very carefully about your priorities, and tomorrow morning, when you're announced as head of internal affairs, you're going to make the smart decision. You're going to work with me instead of against me. And if I don't, then I'll destroy you. Not quickly, that would be too obvious, but slowly, methodically. Your son will find drugs planted in his car. Your wife will face a medical malpractice lawsuit. You'll be investigated for misconduct, for theft, for things you didn't even know you were supposed to have done. And by the time I'm finished, you'll lose your job, your reputation, and possibly your freedom." Harrison stepped back, preparing to return to his car. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Choose wisely, Detective Reynolds. Choose family over principle. Choose survival over justice. Choose life." He walked away, got into his sedan, and drove off into the darkness. Marcus stood there, shaking his mind, reeling. Through the phone, he could hear Angela crying, Jamal swearing, both of them talking over each other. "Dad, are you okay?" "Marcus, come home. Please come home." He got back in his car and drove. His hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, everything was chaos. Harrison had just threatened his family, had proven he could get to them anytime, anywhere, had made it clear that refusing to cooperate would cost Marcus everything he loved. And the worst part, Harrison was right. Marcus had no proof of the threats. The photo could have been taken innocently. The conversation was just words warning advice, nothing prosecutable. If Marcus went to war with Harrison now, his family would pay the price. But if he backed down, if he took the deal, how many other families would suffer? When he pulled into his driveway, Angela and Jamal were waiting at the door. They pulled him inside, checking him for injuries, asking questions he couldn't answer yet. "We have to go to the FBI," Angela said. "Right now. Tonight. We have his threats on recording." "We have him discussing hypotheticals," Marcus interrupted gently. "Nothing concrete enough to arrest him on. Nothing that would hold up in court. Then what do we do? Marcus looked at his wife, his son, the two people who meant more to him than anything in the world. And he made a decision that went against every instinct, every principle, every value he'd spent 30 years defending. "We set a trap," Marcus said quietly. "Harrison thinks he's won, thinks he's scared me into compliance. We're going to let him believe that. And while he's confident and careless, we're going to build a case so airtight, so comprehensive, that when we spring it, he won't see it coming." "That's dangerous," Jamal said. "Everything about this is dangerous. But Harrison made a mistake tonight. He revealed himself, showed me how the operation works, who's involved, how far they're willing to go. Now I know what I'm fighting, and I know how to beat them." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the dead man's switch system. He made a few modifications, adding new recipients, updating the evidence files to include tonight's recording. "Tomorrow morning, I become head of internal affairs, and I start playing the game. I'll appear to cooperate with Harrison, take his guidance, go after the targets he wants me to pursue. But behind the scenes, I'll be documenting everything. Every order, every suggestion, every piece of evidence he tries to feed me. And when I have enough, you take them all down at once," Angela finished. "Everyone. Harrison Briggs, Vance, the city council members, all of them. One massive coordinated strike that they never see coming." It was risky. It meant putting himself deeper into the corruption, pretending to be complicit while gathering evidence. It meant lying to the mayor, deceiving his colleagues, living a double life that could collapse at any moment. But it was also the only way to protect his family while still bringing these criminals to justice. "How long?" Jamal asked. "How long do you have to pretend before you can act?" Marcus thought about the scope of the conspiracy, the number of people involved, the complexity of building a federal case. Months, maybe. It has to be perfect. One mistake, and they'll know I'm playing them. "Months of pretending to be dirty while actually being clean," Angela said. "Marcus, that will destroy you." "Maybe, but it's the only way to save everyone else." They sat together in the living room, processing the night's events, the impossibility of their situation. Outside the neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, oblivious to the war that had just been declared inside this modest suburban home. Marcus's phone buzzed one more time, a text from Harrison. "Smart choice. See you tomorrow, partner." Marcus stared at the word, partner, as if they were allies instead of enemies, as if corruption was just another tool in the law enforcement arsenal. He didn't respond, just set the phone aside and pulled his family close. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow he would step into the role he'd spent his career preparing for, only to have it twisted into something dark and compromised. But tomorrow was also when the real fight would begin. And Marcus Reynolds had never backed down from a fight in his life. He wasn't about to start now. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 5th time, watching his own reflection with a stranger's detachment. The cut on his temple had scabbed over dark against his skin. The bruises on his wrists were hidden beneath his shirt cuffs. But the evidence of Friday night's assault was there, permanent, a reminder of what these men were capable of. Angela appeared behind him, her hands settling on his shoulders. She'd barely slept, he knew. Neither of them had. They'd spent most of the night going over the plan, refining details, preparing for every contingency they could imagine. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "We could leave. Tonight. Pack up and disappear. Start over somewhere they can't find us." Marcus covered her hands with his own. "You know I can't do that." "I know. But I had to say it one more time. Had to give you the out." She leaned her forehead against his back. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come home." "I promise." He turned to face her. "Harrison thinks he's won. That's our advantage. He'll be confident, maybe careless. And while he's busy gloating, I'll be gathering everything we need to bury him. And if he realizes what you're doing, Then the dead man's switch activates and everything goes to the FBI automatically. Either way, the truth comes out. Jamal was waiting in the kitchen, looking like he hadn't slept either. He'd printed out surveillance photos from yesterday, the car that had circled Java Junction, the sedan Harrison had driven, timestamps and license plates, all meticulously documented. "I ran the plates through a public records database," Jamal said, sliding the papers across the table. "Harrison's sedan is registered to a shell company, same company that owns 3 other vehicles I saw near our house last night. Dad, they're watching us." Marcus examined the photos, committing faces and vehicle descriptions to memory. "Good work. Keep documenting everything, every car, every person who seems out of place. Build a timeline. If anything happens to me, this evidence goes to the feds along with everything else." "Nothing's going to happen to you," Jamal said fiercely. "We won't let it." The drive to City Hall felt surreal. Marcus passed through familiar streets, saw the same businesses and landmarks he'd seen for years. But everything felt different now, like he was seeing the city through new eyes, recognizing the rot beneath the surface beauty. Mayor Chen's press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. Marcus arrived at 9:30 to find the building already swarming with reporters, cameras, department brass in their dress uniforms. The mayor had billed this as a major announcement about police reform. She'd kept the specifics vague, building anticipation. Marcus made his way through the crowd to a small conference room where the mayor waited with her communications director and, unfortunately, Richard Vance. The chief of staff smiled when Marcus entered, all warmth and professional courtesy, and Marcus had to force himself to smile back. This man had been in that photo with Harrison and Briggs. This man was part of the conspiracy, and he was standing 3 feet away, pretending to be an ally. "Detective Reynolds," Vance said, extending his hand. "Congratulations on the appointment. The mayor speaks very highly of you." Marcus shook his hand, resisting the urge to break the man's fingers. "Thank you, Mr. Vance. I'm honored by the mayor's confidence." "This is going to be quite the shakeup," Vance continued. "Internal affairs has been toothless for too long. Good to have someone in there who's not afraid to make waves." The irony was suffocating. Vance was playing his part perfectly, the supportive administration official backing police reform. Meanwhile, he was counting on Marcus to either fail or be corrupted. Mayor Chen emerged from a side office looking polished and determined in a navy suit. She pulled Marcus aside while Vance briefed the communications director. "Are you ready for this?" she asked quietly. "Yes, ma'am." "I want you to know whatever you need, you'll have my full support. Budget, personnel, access to records. This department needs someone who can't be bought or intimidated, and I believe you're that person." Marcus studied her face, looking for any sign of duplicity, but she seemed genuine. Either she truly didn't know about Vance's involvement, or she was a better actor than anyone gave her credit for. "I appreciate that, Mayor. Though I should warn you, what I uncover might be uncomfortable. There are people in this department in this city who won't want the truth exposed. Then we'll expose them together." She squeezed his arm. "I didn't become mayor to maintain the status quo, Marcus. I became mayor to fix what's broken, even if that means breaking more things first." They walked together to the main conference room where the press waited. Marcus took his position beside the mayor at the podium, facing a wall of cameras and recording devices. He spotted several officers in the crowd. Captain Wallace looking grim, a few detectives from his old squad giving him thumbs up, and in the back, partially hidden behind a pillar, Deputy Chief Harrison. Harrison caught his eye and nodded slightly. A reminder. A threat. Marcus nodded back, his expression neutral. The mayor began her speech talking about accountability and transparency, and her vision for a police department that served all residents equally. The reporters scribbled notes, cameras flashed, and Marcus stood there feeling like an actor in a play he hadn't rehearsed for. Then Mayor Chen introduced him, listing his credentials, his years of service, his PhD in police psychology. She called him a reformer, a bridge builder, someone who understood both the challenges officers faced and the communities they served. Marcus stepped to the microphone and looked out at the assembled crowd. Somewhere in this city, Officer Reed was hiding, waiting to see if Marcus would follow through. Somewhere, Briggs was probably hearing about this announcement and realizing his reckoning was coming. And somewhere, victims of police abuse were hoping, maybe for the first time, that someone would finally listen. "Thank you, Mayor Chen," Marcus began. "I accept this appointment with full awareness of the responsibility it carries. Internal Affairs exists to maintain the integrity of law enforcement, to ensure that those who wear the badge uphold the oath they took. That's not always easy work. It means investigating colleagues, confronting uncomfortable truths, and sometimes making decisions that won't be popular." He paused, letting his words settle. "But it's necessary work. Because the vast majority of officers in this department are good people trying to do a difficult job. And they deserve to work alongside partners they can trust in a system that rewards integrity and punishes corruption. That's what I intend to build." The questions came fast after that. Would he investigate specific cases? Would there be criminal referrals? How would he balance officer rights with civilian complaints? Marcus answered carefully, giving just enough detail to seem transparent while revealing nothing about his actual plans. He was walking a tightrope, appearing cooperative to Harrison while signaling to reformers that real change was coming. When the press conference ended, Harrison was waiting in the hallway. He fell into step beside Marcus as they walked toward the Internal Affairs offices. "Well done," Harrison said. "Very measured, very political. You're going to do well in this job." "Thank you, Deputy Chief." "Call me Tom. We're partners. Now, remember?" Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've prepared a list of officers who might benefit from your attention. Problem cases, complaints that need addressing. Thought you'd want to make some quick wins, show the public you're serious. That's very helpful. I'm here to support you, Marcus, whatever you need." They stopped outside the IA office door. "In fact, why don't we have lunch this week? Discuss strategy, coordinate our efforts. I know some excellent restaurants, very private." The invitation was a test. Harrison wanted to see if Marcus would play along if he'd accept the role of corrupted reformer. "I'd like that," Marcus lied smoothly. "My schedule this week is packed, but I'll have my assistant reach out." "Perfect." Harrison clapped him on the shoulder, the same shoulder Briggs had yanked when handcuffing him, and walked away. Marcus entered the Internal Affairs suite for the first time as its director. The office was smaller than he'd expected, just 4 desks, 2 interview rooms, and a secure evidence storage area. His predecessor had been a near-retirement captain who'd treated IA as a sinecure, a place to coast until pension eligibility. The files were disorganized, complaints were backlogged by months, and the entire operation had the feeling of deliberate neglect. His new staff consisted of 3 investigators, 2 experienced detectives transferred from other units, and 1 rookie analyst fresh from the academy. They stood when Marcus entered, clearly uncertain what to expect from the new boss. "I'm Marcus Reynolds," he said, even though they obviously knew who he was. "And we have a lot of work to do. But before we get started, I need to know, are you here because you want to be, or because you were assigned here as punishment?" The older detective, a white woman named Sarah Torres with 20 years on the force, answered first. "Volunteered, sir. I've seen too much dirty work get swept under the rug. Figured it was time someone cleaned house." The second detective, a black man named James Mitchell, with a slight limp from an old injury, nodded. "Same. I took a bullet from a cop who shouldn't have been on the street. Department covered it up, called it friendly fire. I've got no love for bad cops, sir." The young analyst, barely 25 and looking nervous, straightened up. "I requested this assignment specifically, sir. My criminology thesis was on police accountability measures. I wanted to be where I could make a difference." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Maybe he wasn't completely alone in this. "Good," he said, "because what we're about to do is going to make us very unpopular. We're going to investigate officers who thought they were untouchable. We're going to reopen cases that were buried for political reasons. And we're going to hold people accountable regardless of rank or connections." Torres smiled grimly. "Music to my ears, boss." They spent the rest of the day going through backlogged cases. Marcus was methodical, having each investigator present their assigned complaints while he took notes. He was looking for patterns connections cases that might link back to Harrison's operation, and he found them. Dozens of complaints against Briggs and his crew, all dismissed for insufficient evidence or inability to substantiate. Patterns of abuse that spanned years, victims who'd tried to report misconduct only to be ignored or intimidated into silence. "We're reopening these," Marcus said, tapping a stack of files related to the Eastern District. "Every single one. And we're going to interview the complainants personally, document everything properly." "Sir," Mitchell said carefully, "some of these cases involve officers with powerful friends. Going after them could bring heat on this office. Let it come. We follow the evidence wherever it leads." Marcus met each investigator's eyes in turn. "I need to know you're with me on this, because once we start, there's no backing down." They all nodded. Torres even smiled. About damn time someone had the balls to do this right. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus lived a double life. Publicly, he appeared to be following Harrison's guidance, investigating the problem officers the deputy chief had flagged cases that were either minor infractions or setups designed to take down Harrison's enemies within the department. Marcus went through the motions, filing reports, making it look like he was playing along. But privately, he was building his real case. He met with Officer Reed in secret locations, diners in other cities, empty parking garages, once in a church basement where Reed was staying with his girlfriend's family. Reed provided names, dates, recordings of conversations where Briggs had openly discussed the quota system. Marcus interviewed Eastern District residents who'd been victimized, documenting their stories with care. An elderly black man who'd had his life savings seized during a traffic stop and never charged with a crime. A Latina shop owner who'd been harassed into paying protection money to avoid constant code enforcement visits. A teenage boy who'd been beaten by Briggs for resisting arrest when his only crime was walking home from basketball practice. Each story was heartbreaking. Each one fueled Marcus's determination. He also began placing his own surveillance on Harrison and Vance. Using the young analyst's technical skills, Marcus obtained court orders for wiretaps under other case numbers, burying the true targets among routine investigations. He tracked their movements, photographed their meetings, documented every interaction with Briggs and the other conspirators. And slowly, methodically, a pattern emerged. Harrison wasn't just protecting dirty cops, he was orchestrating the entire operation. He'd identify properties he wanted to acquire through Westlake development, then deploy Briggs and his crew to clean up those areas through aggressive policing. Property values would drop, current residents would flee or be arrested, and Harrison's company would swoop in to buy cheap. It was systematic displacement disguised as law enforcement, and it was brilliant in its cruelty. But Harrison had made a mistake. He'd gotten comfortable, confident that his position protected him, and confident people got sloppy. 3 weeks into his tenure as IA director, Marcus got the break he needed. A developer named Frank Morrison, the man from Reed's photo, reached out through an intermediary asking for a private meeting. Marcus knew it could be a trap, but Morrison's message had been specific. "I want out. I'll give you everything if you protect my family." They met in a lawyer's office, Morrison's attorney present to negotiate immunity. The developer was a heavy-set man in his 60s, looking 10 years older from stress. His hands shook as he slid a thumb drive across the table. "This is everything," Morrison said. "Financial records showing every payment from Westlake Development to city officials. Emails between Harrison and Vance coordinating property seizures. Recorded conversations where they discussed which neighborhoods to target next." Marcus examined the thumb drive without touching it. "Why are you coming to me now?" "Because I'm dying." Morrison laughed bitterly. "Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I realized I don't want to die as the man who helped destroy communities for profit. I want to die knowing I did one decent thing." This could put you in prison. I don't care. My family will be provided for. I've got life insurance that won't pay out if I'm under indictment, but your immunity agreement fixes that. And the people I helped hurt. Maybe this is my penance. Marcus's attorney reviewed the immunity offer. It was broad, but conditional. Morrison would testify fully and truthfully, and in exchange he'd face no criminal charges related to the conspiracy. Marcus made the call. We have a deal. But Morrison, you understand what you're signing up for. Harrison and Vance will come after you hard. They'll try to discredit you, intimidate you. Let them try. I'm already dead. What more can they do? With Morrison's evidence, Marcus finally had what he needed. Financial crimes that could bring federal charges. Recorded conversations that proved conspiracy. A witness willing to testify about the entire operation. But he still needed the smoking gun. He needed to catch Harrison and Vance in the act on record making decisions that proved they were knowingly breaking the law. So Marcus set a trap. He leaked information through a department source he knew reported to Harrison, letting it slip, that a major property owner in the Eastern District was about to sell to a competitor. That this sale would disrupt Westlake Development's expansion plans. That something needed to be done quickly. Then he waited. 2 days later, Harrison called Marcus into his office. We've got a situation, the deputy chief said. Property owner in your old neighborhood, the Eastern District. Guy named Malcolm Jenkins. He's causing problems. What kind of problems? The kind that need to be handled discreetly. Harrison leaned back in his chair. I need you to file an IA investigation against the officers patrolling Jenkins's block. Create enough pressure that Jenkins decides to sell and get out. This was it. The moment where Harrison directly ordered Marcus to abuse his position. Marcus made sure his hidden recorder was running. You want me to investigate officers to pressure a civilian into selling property? That's not what IA is for. IA is for whatever I need it to be for. Harrison's mask of civility slipped. You work for me, Reynolds, and I'm telling you to handle this. Unless you've forgotten our conversation about your family's safety. I haven't forgotten anything. Good. Then make the investigation happen. Dirty cops, civil rights violations, whatever story you need to tell. Just make Jenkins uncomfortable enough that he takes the offer Westlake Development is about to make. Marcus nodded slowly. And if Jenkins complains, goes to the press. He won't. Because you're going to explain to him very carefully what happens to people who don't cooperate. Use your imagination. Harrison smiled. You're a smart man, Marcus. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Marcus left the office with his recorder full of Harrison directly ordering him to commit crimes. It was beautiful. Damning. Exactly what he needed. But it also meant the endgame was approaching. Harrison had crossed the line from implied corruption to explicit criminal conspiracy. He wouldn't have done that unless he felt completely secure, completely confident that Marcus was under his control, which meant Marcus had to move fast before Harrison realized he'd been played. He called an emergency meeting with his IA team, Torres Mitchell, and the young analyst whose name was David Chen. They gathered in a secure room Marcus had rented under a false name away from any police facilities. It's time, Marcus said, laying out everything he had. Morrison's evidence, Reed's testimony, the recordings of Harrison, surveillance photos of meetings with Vance and Briggs, financial records showing money flowing from Westlake Development to offshore accounts controlled by various city officials. This is insane, Torres breathed. This goes all the way to the mayor's office. Vance is dirty. I don't think the mayor knows, but we'll need to be careful about who we trust. Marcus pulled up an organizational chart he'd created showing all the connections between conspirators. 17 officers directly involved, 10 city officials, multiple developers and contractors. The scope is massive. Mitchell studied the evidence with his detective's eye. This is enough for federal RICO charges. Conspiracy, fraud, civil rights violations under color of law. These people are looking at decades. But we need to arrest them all simultaneously, Marcus said. If we move on one, the others will scatter. Evidence will disappear, witnesses will recant. It has to be coordinated and complete. Chen pulled up a digital map marking locations. Where do we stage the takedown? Marcus had been thinking about this for days. He needed a way to get all the major players in one location, somewhere controlled, where they couldn't escape or destroy evidence. We use Harrison's arrogance against him, Marcus said. He thinks I'm fully corrupted now. So I'm going to propose a meeting all the key players together to discuss expanding the operation. I'll suggest the old lumber warehouse in the Eastern District, the same place where Briggs pulled me over. Private, secure, no witnesses. You're going to wire it, Torres said, catching on. Video and audio surveillance. Catch them all on tape discussing the conspiracy. Exactly. And when they've incriminated themselves thoroughly, federal agents move in and arrest everyone simultaneously. Their homes, their offices, anywhere they might have hidden evidence, all raided at once. You'll need the FBI to commit resources for something this big, Mitchell pointed out. They'll want ironclad guarantees. I've been building a relationship with the regional FBI office, Marcus admitted, sending them updates through encrypted channels, showing them the evidence as I gather it. They're ready to move when I give the word. But there was still one piece missing. One person Marcus needed to confront before the final trap was sprung. That night he requested a meeting with Mayor Chen. Private, confidential, in her home rather than her office. She agreed, probably thinking he wanted to discuss IA business away from potential leaks. Marcus arrived at the mayor's modest house in the suburbs at 8 p.m. She answered the door herself, having sent her security detail away for privacy. That told Marcus something about her character. She wasn't afraid to meet alone with someone who could destroy her politically. They sat in her kitchen over tea, the domestic setting incongruous with the weight of what Marcus had to say. Mayor Chen, I need to tell you something about Richard Vance. Her expression shifted immediately to concern. What about Richard? Marcus laid it out methodically. The evidence of Vance's involvement in Westlake development, his participation in meetings with Harrison and Briggs, the financial trail showing kickbacks and payoffs. The mayor's face went from concern to shock to a cold fury Marcus had never seen from her before. She stood up, paced to the window, stood there with her back to him for a long moment. How long have you known? She asked finally. I suspected after Reed showed me a photo 2 weeks ago. I confirmed it last week when Morrison came forward. And you're telling me now because in 72 hours, I'm going to arrest him along with 17 corrupt officers and 9 other city officials. And I needed you to know beforehand so you can decide how to handle the political fallout. The mayor turned to face him. You're that close to taking them all down. Yes, ma'am. But I need your help with one thing. I need you to attend the final meeting. Her eyes widened. What? The conspirators won't all gather unless there's a compelling reason. But if you call an emergency closed-door session to discuss police reform strategy, if you specifically request that Vance Harrison and certain key officers attend, they'll come. They'll think you're about to announce something big, and they won't be able to resist trying to control it. You want me to be bait. I want you to be the final piece that makes this trap perfect. But Mayor, I understand if... I'll do it. Her voice was iron. That son of a bitch has been whispering in my ear for 2 years, shaping policy-influencing decisions. How many of my initiatives did he sabotage? How many reforms did he derail while pretending to support them? We may never know the full extent. Then let's make sure we know enough to put him in prison. She sat back down, her tea forgotten. Tell me exactly what you need me to do. They planned it carefully. The mayor would call an emergency meeting for Thursday evening at 6 p.m. The location would be the old lumber warehouse she'd presented as a symbolic choice, the site where Internal Affairs had identified police misconduct, now being repurposed as a planning space for reform. Harrison, Vance, Briggs, and the other major players would be invited. The meeting would be private, no press, no recording, or so they'd be told. In reality, Marcus would wire the entire warehouse with FBI surveillance equipment. Agents would be positioned in surrounding buildings. The moment the conspirators incriminated themselves on tape, federal marshals would move in. "What about me?" Mayor Chen asked. "What's my role once everyone's gathered?" "You start the meeting by discussing reform proposals. Let them think they're in control. They'll push back, suggest modifications, reveal their true priorities. And once they're comfortable, once they start talking openly..." Marcus met her eyes. "That's when you tell them who I really am. That I've been investigating them all along. Watch their reactions. Let them panic and confess. You want me to be the one who springs the trap. I want you to reclaim your office from the people who corrupted it. Let Vance see that you know what he did. Let Harrison understand that his arrogance destroyed him. And let every dirty cop in that room realize that the system they thought protected them is the same system that's about to prosecute them." The mayor smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "I'm going to enjoy this." Marcus spent the next 3 days in controlled chaos. He coordinated with FBI Special Agent Linda Morrison, no relation to Frank Morrison the developer, a veteran investigator who specialized in public corruption cases. She brought in a technical team to wire the warehouse, installing cameras and microphones disguised as building fixtures. He also brought Officer Reed back to Westlake under FBI protection, stashing him in a safe house where he could review his testimony and prepare for the trials that would follow. And he made sure Angela and Jamal were protected. FBI agents took up residence in unmarked cars outside their home. Jamal took a sudden vacation to visit his girlfriend's family in another state, removing him as a potential target or hostage. Angela refused to leave. "You're not doing this without me nearby," she said firmly. "I'll stay with my sister across town, but I'm not leaving the city. End of discussion." Marcus didn't argue. He understood. This was their fight together. Thursday arrived with clear skies and unseasonable warmth. Marcus went through his morning routine, mechanically coffee breakfast, the drive to headquarters. He wore his best suit, a navy three-piece that Angela had bought him for Jamal's college graduation. If this was his last day as a cop, he wanted to look the part. At headquarters, he went through the motions of a normal day, reviewing cases, meeting with his IA team, responding to emails. Harrison stopped by his office at noon. "Looking forward to tonight's meeting," the deputy chief said casually. "The mayor's finally ready to listen to reason about what this city really needs." "I think it will be very enlightening," Marcus agreed. "I've got Briggs and his top guys coming. Figure they can provide ground-level perspective on enforcement strategies." Harrison's smile was predatory. "After tonight, we'll have complete control over the reform narrative. You've done good work, Marcus. I knew you'd see things our way eventually." After Harrison left, Marcus allowed himself one moment of satisfaction. The deputy chief had no idea he'd just confirmed his attendance and brought his co-conspirators along. Perfect. The warehouse was on the eastern edge of the district, a massive brick structure that had once housed timber operations before the industry collapsed. The city owned it now, one of dozens of properties tied up in development plans. FBI agents had spent 2 days transforming it into a surveillance hub disguised as a derelict building. Marcus arrived at 5:30 to do a final check. Special Agent Morrison walked him through the setup: 17 cameras with overlapping coverage, directional microphones that could isolate individual conversations, recording equipment that was admissible in federal court. "We've got tactical teams positioned in 3 buildings within 100 yards, Morrison said. "The moment you give the signal, we move in. 2 minutes from signal to full building lockdown. And if something goes wrong, then you've got a panic button in your jacket pocket that brings everyone running." She handed him a small device disguised as a pen. "Click it twice, we storm the place. But Marcus, try not to need it. We want these people talking, confessing, thinking they're safe. The more they say, the stronger our case." "Understood." Mayor Chen arrived at 5:45, looking composed and professional. She'd brought a folder of actual reform proposals cover for the meeting. When she saw the warehouse setup, her eyebrows rose. This is quite the operation. These are quite the criminals, Marcus replied. The others began arriving at 6. Vance came first, looking annoyed at having to travel to this neighborhood. Then Captain Wallace with 3 of his officers. Then Briggs Patterson and 2 other Eastern District cops Marcus recognized from complaint files. Harrison arrived last at 6:05, making an entrance. He surveyed the gathered group with obvious satisfaction. "Looks like we're all here," the deputy chief said. "Madam Mayor, thank you for organizing this meeting. I think you'll find we have some very productive ideas about police reform." "I'm sure you do," Mayor Chen said neutrally. "Please, everyone sit. We have much to discuss." They arranged themselves around a makeshift conference table, Harrison at one end, the mayor at the other, everyone else in between. Marcus stood near the wall observer rather than participant. The meeting began with Mayor Chen outlining basic reform concepts: body cameras, civilian oversight, use of force reviews, standard proposals that reformers had been pushing for years. Harrison let her talk for 5 minutes before interrupting. "Madam Mayor, with respect, these are surface-level changes. What this city needs is comprehensive enforcement in troubled neighborhoods. We need to clean up the Eastern District before we can implement any meaningful reforms." "Clean up how?" the mayor asked. And then Harrison began to talk. About property acquisition strategies. About using aggressive policing to drive down real estate values. About the need to relocate current residents to make room for development. Vance jumped in, adding details about city council support, about permits being expedited for friendly developers, about code enforcement being weaponized against property owners who wouldn't sell. Briggs contributed his piece about traffic stop quotas, about seizing cash and vehicles, about making certain neighborhoods uncomfortable for their current occupants. Marcus listened to them incriminate themselves, each word being recorded. Each confession, another nail in their coffins. They were so confident, so certain they were among allies, that they didn't even try to disguise what they were doing. After 20 minutes of this, Mayor Chen stood up. The room fell silent. "I want to make sure I understand correctly," she said, her voice cold and clear. "You're describing a coordinated conspiracy to violate civil rights, commit fraud, and abuse police power for financial gain. Is that accurate?" Harrison laughed. "I'm describing effective governance, Mayor Chen. Sometimes you have to break a few eggs." "Richard?" The mayor cut him off, turning to Vance. "You've been part of this from the beginning. My chief of staff, my trusted advisor. How long have you been selling out the people of this city?" Vance's smile faltered. "Patricia, I don't know what—" "Don't lie to me. Not now." She turned to face the whole room. "And the rest of you. Officers who swore an oath to serve and protect. What happened to that oath?" "It collided with reality," Harrison said, standing up now, his voice hardening. "Mayor, I don't know what this is about, but you're out of line. These men are following my orders. They're doing the hard work that keeps this city safe." "They're criminals," Mayor Chen said flatly. "Every single one of you. And it's my fault for not seeing it sooner. For trusting Richard. For not looking closely enough at why certain neighborhoods kept getting worse despite increased police presence." The room erupted. Vance protesting, Harrison demanding to know who'd been feeding the mayor, lies Briggs halfway out of his chair looking ready for violence. Marcus stayed still, letting the chaos build. This was the moment. They were panicked, defensive, about to make mistakes. Harrison's voice cut through the noise. "This is Reynolds, isn't it? That son of a bitch has been playing us. Mayor, whatever he told you is fabricated. He's dirty, trying to save himself by throwing innocent officers under the bus." "I have recordings," Marcus said quietly, but his voice carried. "Of you ordering me to abuse my position. Of you threatening my family. Of you and Vance and Briggs coordinating property seizures." The room went dead silent. "That's illegal," Harrison said. "Anything recorded without consent is inadmissible." "In state court, maybe." But federal wiretap laws are different when investigating public corruption. And I had warrants for everything. Marcus pulled out his phone, played back Harrison's voice from their conversation 2 weeks ago. IA is for whatever I need it to be for. Make Jenkins uncomfortable enough that he takes the offer. Harrison's face went white, then red. Then he lunged at Marcus. Marcus sidestepped easily, letting the deputy chief stumble past him. FBI agents burst through 3 different doors simultaneously, weapons-drawn voices shouting commands. FBI hands, where we can see them. Nobody move. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Briggs reached for his service weapon and found himself tackled by 2 agents. Vance tried to run and was brought down before he made it 5 steps. Harrison stood frozen, finally understanding what had happened. Marcus walked up to him calmly and pulled out his handcuffs, the same cuffs he'd carried for 30 years. Deputy Chief Thomas Harrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy fraud civil rights violations, and about 15 other federal charges I'm sure the prosecutors will explain. Marcus secured the cuffs, making sure they weren't too tight. You have the right to remain silent. As Marcus read Harrison his rights, Special Agent Morrison moved through the room coordinating arrests. 17 people taken into custody simultaneously. And outside, Marcus knew federal agents were executing search warrants on dozens of locations: homes, offices, bank vaults. The conspiracy was finished. Mayor Chen stood watching it all, her expression unreadable. When Marcus finished with Harrison, she approached him. It's done. It's done. Your office is secure. The corruption is exposed. And these men will face justice. She nodded slowly, then extended her hand. Thank you, Detective Reynolds. You saved this city. Marcus shook her hand. We saved it together, Madam Mayor. As federal agents led the prisoners out in handcuffs, Marcus allowed himself one moment to breathe, one moment to feel the weight lifting. His phone buzzed. A text from Angela. Come home. We're waiting. Marcus smiled. The war wasn't over. There would be trials, testimony, probably threats and intimidation attempts. But the battle was won. And for the first time in 30 years, Marcus Reynolds believed that real change was possible. The footage went viral within hours. Someone at the FBI, or maybe a reporter who'd been tipped off, leaked the dashcam video from Marcus's original traffic stop. The entire encounter, Briggs calling him boy, the illegal search, the assault, the moment Marcus revealed his badge, spread across social media like wildfire. By morning, it had 20 million views. By the weekend, it was the top story on every major news network. The video captured everything America was arguing about: racial profiling, police brutality, the courage it took to stand up to corruption, even when you were part of the system. Marcus watched the news coverage from his living room, Angela on one side, Jamal on the other, as commentators dissected every second of that night. Some praised his restraint. Others questioned why he hadn't identified himself immediately. A few suggested the whole thing was staged for political purposes. But most people saw it for what it was: proof that the badge didn't protect you from racism, that education and success didn't shield you from violence, that the problem was systemic and deep and required people brave enough to fight it from the inside. They're calling you a hero, Jamal said, scrolling through social media on his phone. Hashtag Justice for Reynolds is trending. People are organizing protests demanding the mayor expand the investigation citywide. I'm not a hero, Marcus said quietly. I'm just a cop who did his job. You're more than that. Angela squeezed his hand. You risked everything. Your career, your safety, our family. That's courage, Marcus. That's heroism. The phone rang constantly those first few days. Interview requests from national news shows, speaking invitations from police reform organizations, messages from officers across the country who'd witnessed corruption in their own departments and wanted advice on how to fight it. Marcus turned down most of them. He had work to do. The federal prosecutions moved quickly. With Morrison's financial records, Reed's testimony and the warehouse recordings the FBI had built cases that were nearly impossible to defend against. 17 officers were arrested that first night. Within 2 weeks, the investigation had expanded to include 34 law enforcement personnel, 12 city officials, and 7 developers and contractors. The mayor's office announced a complete audit of the police department's civilian review boards, with real authority mandatory body cameras for all officers and an independent monitor to oversee reforms. Mayor Chen personally fired Vance and 3 other staffers who'd been complicit in the conspiracy. The trials began 6 months later. Marcus testified in each one, walking prosecutors through the evidence methodically. He explained the quota system, the property seizure scheme, the systematic targeting of minority neighborhoods. Defense attorneys tried to paint him as a rogue officer with a grudge, but the recordings spoke for themselves. Harrison's trial was the longest. The deputy chief's lawyers fought hard, claiming entrapment, arguing that aggressive policing wasn't criminal. But when the jury heard Harrison directly ordering Marcus to abuse his position, when they saw the financial records showing millions flowing to his shell companies, when Frank Morrison testified about the coordination between police and developers, the verdict was inevitable. Guilty on all counts. 23 years in federal prison. Briggs got 18 years. Vance got 15. Captain Wallace, who'd turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence, got 7 years and permanent prohibition from law enforcement. One by one, the conspirators fell, and with each conviction, Marcus felt something shift in the city. A sense that maybe, just maybe, the system could work if you had the courage to use it properly. But the emotional toll was enormous. Marcus had spent months living a double life, pretending to be corrupt, while gathering evidence, carrying the weight of knowing his family was in danger. The stress manifested in nightmares, dreams where he was back in handcuffs, back on that dark road with Briggs's flashlight in his eyes, except this time no one came to help. Angela recognized the signs. She'd seen PTSD in her nursing career often enough. She convinced Marcus to see a therapist, a veteran who specialized in treating officers who'd experienced trauma. "You can't heal what you don't acknowledge," the therapist told him during their first session. "You went through something terrible. You were assaulted, threatened, forced to work undercover in a dangerous situation for months. That leaves scars. It's okay to not be okay." Marcus spent the next year in therapy, learning to process what had happened, to separate his identity from his job, to understand that strength wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to keep going despite it. And slowly, he healed. The police department underwent massive restructuring. Nearly 40 officers were fired or resigned rather than face investigation. Recruitment standards changed. The academy began prioritizing candidates with college degrees in social work, psychology, and community relations, rather than just criminal justice. Training shifted from a paramilitary model to one emphasizing de-escalation, mental health crisis intervention, and cultural competency. Marcus was appointed to lead the reform effort. He traveled to police departments across the country, teaching chiefs and commanders how to identify corruption in their ranks, how to build accountability systems that actually worked, how to create cultures where good cops felt safe reporting bad ones. In Camden, he spoke to a room of 200 officers about the night Briggs pulled him over. "I had every advantage," he told them. PhD, 30 years on the force, the respect of my colleagues, and none of it mattered when a racist cop decided I was a threat because of my skin color. That's when I understood this isn't about bad apples. It's about an orchard that's been poisoned from the roots. We have to dig it all up and plant something new. In Seattle, he met with community activists who'd been fighting police brutality for decades. They were skeptical at first, another cop promising reform. But when they heard his story, when they saw the scars on his wrists that had never fully faded, they recognized him as someone who understood their pain. "The system failed you too," one activist said. "Even with all your privilege, even with your position, they still came for you. Maybe that's what it takes. Maybe cops need to experience what we experience before they'll believe us." "I hope not," Marcus replied. "I hope we can learn from each other's stories without everyone having to suffer first." But you're right that understanding comes from experience. That's why we need diversity in law enforcement. We need officers who have lived in the communities they serve, who understand what it's like to be on the other side of that badge. Back in Westlake, the changes were visible. The Eastern District, freed from Briggs' harassment campaign, began to stabilize. Small businesses reopened. Families who'd fled started returning. Property values rose, but this time the appreciation benefited current residents instead of outside developers. Marcus drove through the neighborhood monthly, checking on progress. He'd stop at Mrs. Henderson's corner store. She'd been one of the victims Briggs had shaken down for protection money. She always had a hug for him and a story about how things were improving. "My grandson can walk to school now without being stopped and searched," she told him one afternoon. "He can just be a kid. You gave us that Detective Reynolds. You gave us our neighborhood back." "We gave it back together," Marcus corrected. "You testified. You spoke up even when it was dangerous. That took more courage than anything I did." The national attention brought speaking requests from universities, think tanks, civil rights organizations. Marcus accepted some of them, always bringing the same message: reform was possible, but only if people were willing to fight for it from inside the system. At Yale Law School, a student asked him if he thought police departments could ever truly be reformed, or if they needed to be abolished entirely. Marcus thought carefully before answering. "I understand why people ask that question. I've seen the harm police can do when they're corrupt or racist or poorly trained. But I've also seen what happens when communities have no public safety infrastructure, violence fills that vacuum, and the vulnerable suffer most. So I don't think abolition is the answer. I think we need radical transformation. We need to reimagine what policing means, who becomes an officer, and why, how we train them and hold them accountable. We need to demilitarize, decriminalize poverty and mental illness, and invest in services that prevent crime instead of just punishing it. That's hard work. It takes decades, not months, but it's worth doing." At home, life found a new rhythm. Angela had been promoted to head nurse in her department, using her increased influence to push for better mental health resources for pediatric patients who'd experienced police violence. She and Marcus would sit up late some nights, sharing stories from their respective battles against systemic injustice, finding strength in each other's determination. Jamal completed his master's degree in social work and surprised no one by announcing his decision to apply to the police academy. Marcus and Angela had discussed this possibility many times, their feelings complicated and conflicted. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked his son over dinner the night Jamal submitted his application. "You've seen what this job costs. You've lived through the threats, the danger, the toll it takes." "I've also seen what it can accomplish," Jamal replied. "Dad, you dismantled a corrupt network that had been operating for years. You changed an entire department's culture. You proved that one person with courage and integrity can make a difference. That's exactly what I want to do. But you can do good work as a social worker. You can help people without putting yourself in danger. The danger is why it matters." Jamal leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Think about all the people who need help but are terrified of calling the police. Victims of domestic violence, kids in crisis, people with mental illness. They deserve officers who understand trauma, who know how to de-escalate, who see them as human beings instead of problems to be controlled. I can be that kind of officer. And if I can, maybe I can inspire others to be that way too." Angela wiped tears from her eyes. "You sound just like your father 30 years ago, full of idealism and hope." "Is that a bad thing?" "It's a beautiful thing," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "And it's terrifying. But your mother and I didn't raise you to play it safe. We raised you to stand up for what's right. So if this is your calling, if you truly believe you can help change the system from within, then we support you." 100%, Angela added. "But Jamal, promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll remember that your life matters more than any arrest, any quota, any supervisor's approval." I promise, Mom. Jamal entered the academy that fall, part of a new recruiting class that was 40% people of color, 35% women, and included candidates with backgrounds in social work, mental health counseling, and community organizing. The training was different too. Less emphasis on warrior mentality, more focus on guardian principles. Fewer hours on weapons and tactics, more on communication and conflict resolution. Marcus attended Jamal's graduation ceremony 18 months later, watching his son receive his badge from Mayor Chen herself. The mayor had been re-elected in a landslide after cleaning up her administration, her approval ratings soaring once the public saw her commitment to real reform. "Officer Jamal Reynolds," the mayor said, shaking his hand. "Your father changed this department. I expect you'll continue that legacy." "I'll do my best, ma'am." Watching Jamal take his oath, Marcus felt a complicated mix of pride and fear. His son was entering the same profession that had almost destroyed Marcus, the same system that had brutalized and betrayed him. But it was also a system that Marcus had fundamentally changed. The department Jamal was joining was different from the one Marcus had entered 3 decades ago. Not perfect, not free of racism or corruption, those battles would never be completely won. But better, accountable, committed to serving instead of controlling. After the ceremony, Marcus pulled Jamal aside. "I have something for you." He handed his son a small box. Jamal opened it to find a recording device, the same type Marcus had used to gather evidence against Harrison and Briggs. "Dad, what?" "Insurance," Marcus said. "I hope you never need it. I hope the reforms we've implemented mean you'll never face what I faced. But if you do, if you ever encounter corruption or abuse, you'll have the tools to document it, and the knowledge that doing the right thing is worth the cost." Jamal tucked the device into his pocket. "The only way to change the system is from within, right? That's what I believe. That's what you're proving." Marcus pulled his son into a hug. "I'm so proud of you. Your mother and I both are." The months that followed brought more changes. The Westlake Police Department became a model for reform efforts nationwide. Crime rates dropped as community trust increased. Use of force incidents declined by 67%. Civilian complaints were taken seriously, investigated thoroughly, and resolved transparently. Officer Reed, who'd been instrumental in exposing the conspiracy, was promoted to sergeant and assigned to lead the department's new community policing unit. He'd shown exceptional courage in testifying, and the department wanted to reward that, while also sending a message that speaking truth to power would be valued, not punished. Marcus met with Reed occasionally for coffee, 2 men bound by their shared experience of choosing integrity over self-preservation. "Sometimes I still have nightmares about that night," Reed admitted during one of their meetings. "I see Briggs pulling you over, see myself standing there doing nothing, and I wake up in a cold sweat, wondering if I could have stopped it sooner." "You stopped it when it mattered," Marcus said. "That's what counts. And look at what you've built since your community policing program is changing how officers interact with residents. You're making a real difference. Because you showed me it was possible. Because you proved that one person could take on a corrupt system and win." "We won together," Marcus corrected. Yumi Morrison, the FBI agents, Mayor Chen, all the victims who found the courage to testify. That's how real change happens, not through individual heroes, but through communities of people committed to justice. 2 years after the initial arrests, Marcus received a call from the Department of Justice. They wanted to bring him on as a consultant for a national program training police departments in anti-corruption measures and accountability systems. He discussed it with Angela that night, the 2 of them sitting on their back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. "It would mean a lot of travel," Marcus said, "weeks away from home, but it would also mean spreading what we learned here to departments across the country. How many officers could we protect? How many communities could we help?" Angela was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember when we first got married? You told me you wanted to change the world. Make policing something noble instead of something people feared. I was young and naive. You were idealistic, and you still are underneath all the scars and cynicism. She took his hand. Take the job, Marcus. Go teach other departments what you learned. I'll be here when you come home. I've always been here. And you always will be, Marcus said, pulling her close. That's the only reason I survived all this. Because I had you. The consultancy work took Marcus to cities large and small. He trained chiefs in Baltimore who were trying to rebuild trust after their own corruption scandals. He advised supervisors in Minneapolis on creating early warning systems to identify problem officers before they caused irreparable harm. He spoke to recruits in Los Angeles about why they'd chosen this career and how to stay true to those ideals when the job got hard. And everywhere he went, Marcus told his story. Not as a tale of individual heroism, but as evidence that systems could change, that corruption could be defeated, that justice was possible if enough people were willing to fight for it. He showed them the scars on his wrists. Let them see that even he, with all his advantages and authority, had been victimized by the system he'd dedicated his life to serving. And then he showed them how he'd fought back, how he'd used the tools of accountability and transparency to dismantle that corruption. The system protects itself, he told a room full of police chiefs in Chicago. Bad cops protect each other because they know that if one falls, they might all fall. That's why reform has to be comprehensive, systematic, and supported from the top down. You can't just fire a few officers and call it fixed. You have to change the culture, the training, the accountability mechanisms, the entire ecosystem that allows corruption to flourish. Back home, Jamal was thriving in his new role. Marcus would get texts from his son about successful interventions, talking down a suicidal veteran instead of using force, connecting a homeless family with services, instead of arresting them, building relationships with community members who'd never trusted police before. This is what it should be. Jamal texted after a particularly good shift. Helping people, not controlling them. I finally understand why you stayed in this job even when it hurt you. Because when you do it right, it matters. Marcus showed the message to Angela, who smiled through tears. He gets it. Our son really gets it. 3 years after the arrests, Marcus decided to reduce his travel schedule and return to full-time work in Westlake. The department had stabilized, but reform was an ongoing process that required constant attention. New challenges emerged, budget pressures threatened to undo some improvements. A few veteran officers resisted the cultural changes, and there were always people looking for ways to game the new accountability systems. But Marcus was ready for those challenges. He'd learned that perfection was impossible, that progress was messy and slow, and that setbacks didn't mean failure, as long as you kept pushing forward. On a quiet Tuesday evening, exactly 4 years after Briggs had pulled him over, Marcus decided to drive through the Eastern District one more time. He wanted to see how far they'd come to witness the transformation he'd helped create. The neighborhood had changed dramatically. The boarded-up storefronts were now small businesses, a coffee shop, a bookstore, a Caribbean restaurant that filled the block with the smell of jerk chicken. The empty lots had been converted to community gardens and playgrounds. The groups of young men who used to watch every car with suspicion now sat on stoops playing dominoes, laughing, looking relaxed. Marcus drove slowly, taking it all in. He passed the lumber yard where he'd been assaulted, now converted to affordable housing units. He drove past Mrs. Henderson's corner store, which had expanded and hired 3 new employees. He saw children playing basketball under new streetlights, elderly residents sitting on their porches without fear, neighbors talking and laughing together. This was what justice looked like. Not just punishing the guilty, but healing the communities they'd harmed. Not just removing corrupt officers, but building systems that prevented corruption from taking root in the first place. As Marcus approached an intersection, he saw a patrol car parked at the curb. A young officer was talking to a group of teenagers, and Marcus slowed to watch. The officer was black, maybe mid-20s, and the kids were laughing at something he'd said. Not the nervous laughter of people confronting authority, but genuine amusement. The officer noticed Marcus's car and turned. Their eyes met, and the young man's face lit up with recognition. He said something to the teenagers, then walked over to Marcus's window. Marcus rolled it down, curious. "Sir," the officer said, and there was genuine respect in his voice. "I just wanted to say I know who you are, what you did. You're the reason I became a cop, the reason I believed this job could be something good." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "What's your name, officer?" "Davis. Marcus Davis. My mom named me after you. She lived in this neighborhood when Briggs was running his operation, lost her car in one of his seizures, couldn't get to work, almost lost her job. You got it back for her when you exposed what he was doing." The young officer's eyes were bright. "She told me, if there are cops like Detective Reynolds, then maybe policing can be what it's supposed to be. So I applied to the academy, and here I am." Marcus had to blink back tears. "You're doing good work out here, Officer Davis. I saw you with those kids. That's how it should be done." "Learned from the best, sir. The training now, it's all about community respect, treating people like human beings. That's your legacy. That's what you built." They talked for a few more minutes, Marcus asking about Davis's experience in the academy, his goals, his challenges. The young officer was thoughtful and articulate, exactly the kind of person Marcus had envisioned when he'd pushed for recruiting reforms. When Davis returned to his patrol, Marcus sat in his car for a long moment, letting the weight of that encounter sink in. A young man named after him, a mother who'd gotten justice, a neighborhood transformed, kids playing without fear, officers serving instead of terrorizing. This was the breakthrough, not the arrests or the trials or the media attention. This quiet moment, this simple exchange, this evidence that everything he'd fought for had actually mattered. Marcus pulled away from the curb and continued driving. The sun was setting now, painting the eastern district in golden light. He passed block after block of revitalization, of hope, of communities reclaiming their neighborhoods from fear. His phone buzzed with a text from Angela. "Dinner in 20 minutes. Your son is here with his girlfriend. We have news." Marcus smiled. Life was moving forward, new chapters beginning. Jamal was building his own legacy now, making his own difference. And somewhere in the city, young officers like Marcus Davis were learning that the badge could be a tool for justice instead of oppression. The system wasn't perfect. It never would be. There would always be corrupt officers, always be people who abused their authority, always be communities that suffered under unjust policies. The work of reform was never finished. But it was possible. That was the lesson Marcus had learned through pain and courage and persistence. Change was possible if you were willing to fight for it from within, if you refused to be silent, if you believed that one person with integrity could start a movement. As Marcus drove home through the streets he'd protected for 30 years, he thought about all the people who'd helped make this transformation possible. Officer Reed, who'd found his courage when it mattered most. Frank Morrison, who'd chosen redemption over complicity. Mayor Chen, who'd risked her political career for principle. Special Agent Morrison and her FBI team, who'd supported the investigation when local authorities couldn't be trusted. Angela, who'd stood by him through every dark moment. And Jamal, who'd chosen to carry the mission forward into the next generation. None of them had done it alone. All of them had contributed to something larger than themselves. Marcus pulled into his driveway as the last light faded from the sky. Through the kitchen window, he could see Angela setting the table, Jamal and his girlfriend laughing about something, the warmth and love and normalcy he'd fought so hard to protect. He sat in the car for one more moment, remembering where this had all started. A traffic stop on a dark road. Hands on the wheel trying to stay calm while a racist cop violated his rights. The flash of rage and helplessness. The cold calculation of survival, the moment when he'd decided that enough was enough. 4 years ago, Marcus Reynolds had been just another victim of a broken system, but he'd refused to stay a victim. He'd used his position, his skills, his courage to expose corruption and build something better. And now, driving through the neighborhoods he'd helped heal, seeing young officers who believed in justice, watching his son embrace the same calling that had defined his life. Marcus understood that his greatest achievement wasn't taking down Harrison or reforming the department or changing police culture nationwide. His greatest achievement was proving that one person could make a difference. That integrity mattered. That the system could be transformed by people brave enough to stand up, speak out, and refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. The work would continue. There would be new challenges, new battles, new corrupt officials who needed to be stopped. But Marcus was ready for them. And more importantly, he wasn't alone anymore. A whole generation of officers like Jamal and Davis were joining the fight, carrying forward the belief that policing could be something noble, something worthy of the oath they'd sworn. Marcus got out of his car and walked toward his front door, toward his family, toward the life he'd nearly lost, defending his principles. The cut on his temple had healed, leaving a small scar that he touched sometimes when he needed to remember. The bruises on his wrists had faded, but the strength they'd taught him remained. He opened the door to laughter and warmth and the smell of Angela's cooking. Jamal called out a greeting. His girlfriend waved, and Angela smiled at him, with the love that had sustained him through everything. "We're pregnant," Jamal announced, barely able to contain his excitement. "You're going to be grandparents." Marcus froze, then laughed, then pulled his son into a fierce hug. "That's wonderful. That's perfect." "I want to name him Marcus," Jamal said. "If it's a boy, continue the legacy." "Then you better teach him to be brave." Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Teach him that standing up for what's right matters more than being safe or comfortable. Teach him that the system can change, but only if good people refuse to stay silent." "I will," Jamal promised. "Just like you taught me." That night, sitting around the dinner table with his family, Marcus Reynolds felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, but certainty. The work he'd started would outlive him. The changes he'd fought for would continue to grow and spread. And the next generation, his son, his future grandchild, young officers like Davis, would carry forward the mission of transforming broken systems into instruments of justice. The battle wasn't over. It would never be completely over. But for tonight, in this moment, surrounded by love and hope and possibility, Marcus allowed himself to believe that they were winning. One traffic stop at a time. One honest conversation at a time. One courageous officer at a time. One transformed community at a time. That was how you changed the world. Not through grand gestures or political speeches, but through persistent, principled action. Through refusing to accept corruption as normal. Through believing that justice was possible, even when everything suggested it wasn't. Marcus looked around the table at the faces of the people he loved most, at the future they were building together, and he smiled. The only way to change the system was from within, and he'd spent his entire career proving that truth. Now it was someone else's turn to carry it forward. And that, Marcus thought, as he raised his glass in a toast to his future grandchild, was the greatest victory of all.